A big bulky man sees a small lanky boy named Lee Sungmin, who is looking confused. The man tells the boy to calm down and listen to him. Sungmin is still confused and bewildered by the situation he is in, and he checks himself to see if it is really real. The name of the world they are in is Area, and all kinds of demons and monsters exist in this world. This world is a battleground where everything fights to survive. This greedy world summons various otherworlders from every dimension. The first place he summoned otherworlders to reach is the place where Lee Sungmin resides now, the City of Beginnings, Xenovis. The man asks Sungmin if he has learned martial arts or magic before, to which Sungmin responds, no. From this response, the man assumes that Sungmin has no class. Sungmin is confused by what he means by no class. The man tells him that it is just a term and that he will explain it to him slowly, so he instructs him to follow him. The man tells him that now that he has seen him summoned, he cannot just leave him be. He insists that they talk while they eat, assuming that Sungmin is probably hungry. They walk through a discreet alleyway, and the man asks Sungmin if he is thirsty from being summoned. Sungmin responds, saying that he is quite a bit thirsty, so the man hands him a bottle of water. Sungmin thanks the man for being so generous and kind to him. He drinks the water from the bottle but immediately spits it out, spraying the man in the face. The liquid that was spat out seems to be stinging the man's eyes. Sungmin's timid demeanor seems to have changed. He spills out the remaining liquids in the bottle and tells the man that it was hard acting like a pushover who knows nothing. He tells the man that he was aware that the liquid in the bottle contained goblin paralytic poison. He noticed that, although it didn't change the water's taste or color, it had a subtle fishy smell to it. This explains why the liquid is stinging the man's eyes when it is spat out on his face. It turns out that Sungmin wasn't a naive beginner, and he had just been putting on an act to trick the man. But some of the man's assumptions were indeed correct. Sungmin was just summoned, and he is not in any class, but he has 13 years of experience. He is able to knee-kick the man in the crotch despite the massive size difference between them. He sees the knife in the man's vest and snatches it, using it against the man and slitting his throat. He then reminds the man of one of Aria's rules: don't trust others easily. After Sungmin's confrontation with the man, he has collected 100,000 ER and a single dagger, which isn't really much, but it is better than nothing. Sungmin had checked his body before, and he observed that not a single scar nor any muscles were present, so he concludes that he has returned to 13 years ago, when he was first summoned to Area. Lee Sungmin was 27 years old and a C-rank mercenary. He lived a common lower-class life, making just enough money to live through the day in Area. Because he had neither talent nor background, he couldn't climb to the top, no matter how hard he tried. He looked for a way to change his irritating life and was able to hold onto a chance when he found an undiscovered dungeon. After painstaking efforts, he found one meager treasure chest, and after opening it with high hopes, there was only a single small rock within. He only carried it around with him since he had no way to find out its use, but it ended up with him in his current situation. After taking everything into account, the stone seems to be something that returns the holder to the past, a stone of regression. Sungmin checks his status to see if anything has changed, but when he checks, his stats are the same as the ones he had when he was first summoned 13 years ago. He first thinks that the regression was worthless, but he then realizes that he retained 13 years worth of memories. It's not completely vivid, but he still remembers big events, and he can now do certain things because he is not in class. There are all kinds of otherworldly beings summoned to Area. There are mages who use magic and martial artists who use martial arts, and among them, the most common are no class. It's a blank slate. They can learn anything and even receive a special growth bonus. Though it sounds amazing at first glance, they're actually the lowest-ranking individuals in the ecosystem, or Area. Since they have no abilities, they all die in the wild environment of Area before they even get to do anything. Lee Sungmin was also of no class and lived as a C-rank mercenary while suffering all sorts of hardships and humiliation for 13 years. But in the end, he died. He lived a shabby life with no accomplishments, so he promises himself that he will become stronger by using whatever it takes. Sungmin arrives at the Healthy Bone Realignment Office and asks to receive a skeleton remodeling procedure. Through the procedure, he has acquired a low-rank martial skeleton and a true heaven cultivation technique. He obtained 2 of the 3 chances that could improve his pathetic state that he couldn't obtain in Xenovis 13 years ago. The martial skeleton allows him to easily learn martial arts. The only way to receive this procedure is to be no class and to have no skills learned. The man doing the procedure offers to do the procedure on Sungmin for free in return for free advertising. In his past life, the doctor who did the procedure died from an illness shortly after, so there were very few people who obtained the opportunity. Now that he has the martial skeleton along with the no-class growth bonus, he can get stronger even faster. The True Heaven Cultivation Technique is a technique that allows one to accumulate internal energy. It is the basics of an energy cultivation technique. There are various categories of cultivation techniques that are categorized by their stability or internal energy enhancement speed. The one that he had learned in his past life was an ordinary second-rate cultivation technique, but there was a first-rate cultivation technique hidden in a small old library in Cenevis. The library owner was unaware of its worth, so he was able to buy it dirt cheap. Sungmin now wants the remaining third chance, the winning prize of the Colosseum that will open in a year. Its standards aren't very high because only one class can participate. It is more than possible that he stays in Cenevis to raise his skills during that year. What he needs right now is sufficient funds for lodging, so he needs to earn at least 30,000 ER per day. So to earn money while honing his skills, he needs to hunt monsters. Sungmin approaches a man selling armor. He notices a chest vest that he takes an interest in. The man selling it tells him that it could probably fit him since the adventurer who used to use it was around his size. He attempts to buy 3 items: the chest vest armor, a spear, and 2 daggers. The man selling asks Sungmin if he even has money to buy all of the items, and Sungmin tells the man he has 60,000 ER on him. The man laughs out loud, telling Sungmin to screw off since he needs at least $300,000 to buy the items that he wants. Sungmin asks the man if he can put it on credit, but the man refuses. Sungmin then offers to sell his clothes and asks the man how much he is willing to give him for them. Sungmin tries his best to convince the man, but his efforts are useless. The man laughs at him for suddenly coming at him with run-down eyes after making him laugh with an innocent expression earlier. The man then tells Sungmin to take the items that he wants and that he'll take credit for the amount that Sungmin is missing. He tells Sungmin that he likes his worn and torn attitude, struggling desperately even though he is just a brat. He tells Sungmin that he thinks he will become one of his regulars, so he tells him to make sure to pay the $250,000 ER credit as soon as he gets the money. Sungmin thanks the man, but he seems to be a bit confused by the man's attitude. One's survival rate greatly depends on whether one has armor or not. Even if it is just light armor, it was a good choice to buy armor, even though he had to push himself. He had never received a favor like the one from the man selling the armor before. Things like that weren't really common in area. He wonders if the man was thinking about stabbing him in the back after getting close to him. He is on the hunting grounds, and it reminds him of when he first came there 13 years ago. Back then, he was the epitome of pathetic. Now that he is more ready and better equipped, he is able to hunt down monsters more easily. He uses his spear to impale a goblin with one shot. One shot, one kill is a movement that shoots a spear using the left hand as a barrel. Using it with an untrained hand, like his, causes burns. He decides to make some calluses on his hands first to prevent any further injury. A mysterious person with long green hair and a black robe meditates in a dark and eerie room with red mist surrounding them. Blue particles begin to appear, which catch the person by surprise. Sungmin arrives at a shop, and he is greeted and welcomed by Jack Ajasi, a worker at the shop. He hands over the accommodation fee to Jack. Jack then asks him where he bought the dimensional pouch from, since an item like that would cost close to $1 million. Sungmin says that he got it cheaply from the merchant he deals with frequently. He hands over goblin teeth and body fluids to Jack, and for the amount he has given him, Jack will let him stay in the inn for 2 days. Jack then compliments Sungmin, telling him that when he first came up to him, he suggested using monster byproducts to pay for accommodation. He also looked like he was about to die soon. It has been 2 weeks since Sungmin has stayed in Jack's inn, and he has hunted down monsters every day since then. Jack wonders if this is what being talented feels like. Jack is starting to annoy Sungmin, so he just walks away while Jack continues blabbering. Sungmin is still upset about Jack's comment about him being talented. He thinks that it's a word that doesn't suit him because he was so untalented back then. After he suffered a lot, he ended his previous life as a C-class mercenary. Sungmin is able to learn martial arts by remembering how they worked in his previous life, but the techniques he has relearned are just second-rate martial arts. No matter how hard he learns the second-rate martial arts, he can't climb his way up. The only hope he has is the first-rate cultivation technique, the pure heavenly cultivation technique. He uses the technique in order to get strong in martial arts. The next day comes, and a girl in the inn asks Sungmin if he is going to the forest again. She then asks him why he is always hunting in the woods, since he is putting his life at risk by being there. This girl is the daughter of Jack and Lula. Sungmin then responds to her, saying that it is because he is an otherworlder, so if he wants to survive, he has to catch monsters to make money. She then scolds him, calling him a fool, and explains to him that there are other jobs that he could do. She then recommends to him a job working at their inn since her dad has already grown a liking for him. He refuses this offer, saying that he doesn't know how to cook or clean. Lula can't seem to understand Sungmin. He leaves and tells Lula that he will be back by dinner. In his past life, he lived while compromising with others. He could do that again, but he doesn't want to live like that. This time, he will try to obtain the things he has desired, and he will do anything it takes to live a better life than his previous one. The noon bell strikes, which means another otherworlder will be summoned. A portal appears near a fountain, and a young person with red eyes wearing a robe comes out. Sungmin wonders if this person knows martial arts and if they are the same age as him. The person gets approached by a bunch of thugs and gets offered a bottle of water, just like Sungmin when he was first summoned. Sungmin turns away, but he bumps into a tall, bulky man. The man punches Sungmin in the face and throws him to the ground. The citizens around them begin to get concerned about the commotion they are causing. The bulky man explains to them that Sungmin broke his nose and that he is teaching him a lesson. The citizens then ignore them and begin minding their own business. The thugs from before call for the bulky man. His name is Hang Nim. The bulky man seems to be from the same gang as the thugs he saw before. He recognizes him as a third-rate martial artist based on the technique he used. A martial artist can be distinguished by their level of martial arts. Third-rate martial artists are the lowest level and can be reached in no time, even with little mastery of martial arts. However, Sungmin had just regressed, so he hasn't been able to reach the third-rate level yet. Sungmin can't win by himself, and with how heartless the people in Cenovis are, there's no way anyone will help him. He warns the otherworlder from before, telling him that the bottle the thugs gave him has paralytic poison in it. The young man then spills out the contents of the bottle. The thug from before walks up to Sungmin, threatening him, and then approaches to hit him with a knee kick. He dodges the attack with his technique and attacks the thug in the ribs with his elbow and then his palms shortly after. The techniques Sungmin is using don't seem to greatly affect the thug. When it comes to weight and muscle strength, a child can't really do much with martial arts. The other thugs then warn the others that if they make a fuss, the guards will come. The thug tries to finish things off with Sungmin. Sungmin is aware that he can't win the fight with his bare hands, so he resorts to using his spear, but before he can finish getting his spear from his pouch, he is approached by the young man that was summoned before in the middle of the fight. He tells Sungmin to repeat what he said to him earlier. He gets distracted by this sudden intervention, and the thug's fist is fast approaching. The young man offers his help and blasts the thug, who attacks them with ease. The thug goes flying and lands on the other thugs who had just been beaten. Sungmin is shocked by the power the newbie was able to display. A palm attack that is unfused with internal energy isn't something that someone of a lower rank can achieve. From what he has shown, he is a peak martial master. Sungmin starts piecing things together. He is around his age, a peak martial master, and was summoned around the same time as him. He wonders if this boy is the little heavenly demon, Wiji Hoyan. The demonic cult is the representative of the unorthodox sects. They worship power itself. The strongest in the cult would become the head of the demonic cult and would be called the heavenly demon. His child is referred to as the young leader, an otherworlder who was the young leader. He is the little heavenly demon, Wiji Hoyan. From an early age, he was able to use peak-level martial arts. He came to Iria as an otherworlder and made a name for himself all over Iria. He was about the same age as Sungmin, but there was a huge power gap between them. Hoyan is in Sungmin's room, and they introduce themselves to each other. Sungmin explains to Hoyan about the world that they are in, saying that it is different from the world they were previously in. Hoyan then asks if there is no demonic cult in their world. Sungmin says that there are no demonic cults in their world, and Hoyeon starts giggling. Hoyeon then recalls the time they were being confronted by thugs earlier at the plaza and asks Sungmin what he was shouting at him. Sungmin tells him that he was trying to stop him from drinking the water because it had paralytic poison in it. Hoyeon starts laughing, but he calls Sungmin arrogant for speaking informally to him. Sungmin immediately apologizes to him. Hoyeon then points out how Sungmin was using martial arts earlier and starts insulting his skills, calling them trash and lousy. He asks him where he learned such lousy martial arts. Sungmin starts getting offended by these condescending comments and asks what Hoyeon's intentions are. Hoyeon responds, saying that he will teach him martial arts. This shocks Sungmin. Hoyeon promises him that if he teaches him, he will most definitely improve, but he has conditions, which are that Sungmin must become his friend. Sungmin is utterly shocked and confused by this condition. In a flashback, we see a younger Hoyeon telling his father, the demon cult leader, Heavenly Demon Wiji-hak, that he wants a friend. He tells his father that he learned about friends in a book he read and that he learned that having a friend can overcome all hardships. His father then scolds him, telling him that that is not true for Hoyeon since he will succeed the throne and rule over the myriad demons, so there is no need for him to have friends. Hoyeon walks off, saddened by his father's scolding. Hak then comments about his son's combative skills. During the training, his son was able to beat fat people despite being a 10-year-old. Being the heir to the demon cult, he grew up with a lot of expectations. He began training when he was young, so he did not have the time to make friends. There was no logical reasoning behind this. Sungmin then accepts Hoyeon's offer and becomes his friend, but he is a bit taken aback that he, a 27-year-old man on the inside, is friends with a 13-year-old. Hoyeon begins teaching Sungmin the Violet Mystic Art. It is a technique from the unorthodox sect that has a unique characteristic. Sungmin then questions why he is being taught Violet Dawn Mystic Art when he thought he would be taught demon cult martial arts. Hoyeon then questions why he is using formal language when talking to him. He tells him to use informal language since they are friends. Hoyeon starts explaining that the heavenly demonic mystic art that he practiced is the martial art that is practiced by the leader and the heir, so he can't teach him that, but he won't regret learning the Violet Dawn mystic art because it is quite a good technique. A month had passed since Hoyeon started teaching Sungmin the Violet Dawn mystic art. Sungmin's current level of martial arts is between 3rd and 2nd class. Compared to his previous life, this is a big development, but he gets reminded of Hoyeon's snarky comments about his skills, or the lack thereof. While in the forest, Sungmin gets ambushed by a big orc. He is able to dodge the attack in time, but he is taken by surprise. Using his spear, Sungmin is able to defeat the orc with one clean hit to the chest. He then takes a closer inspection, wondering where the orc came from since they don't live within the vicinity. A man then appears behind him. He introduces himself as Woon Hyorian, the Orchid Destruction Sword. Sungmin asks him that with what business he is approaching him. He tells him that he is there because of a problem related to the orc. Woon takes Sungmin to Do Sangryang, a little monkey. Do is unsure about Sungmin, saying that he is too young, but Woon reassures him that he saw him fight with his very own eyes and that he possesses promising skills. The other members of their group introduce themselves to Sungmin. Wang Pi is the Black Rain Dagger, and Rainier is a Mei from the School of Velas. Woon explains that recently within the area, an orc faction established a new orc village, and there have been reports of them either raiding nearby villages or murdering novice adventurers. So the mercenary guild has put up a reward of 20 million ER for wiping out the orc village, and if the loot is added up, the total profit will be around 35 million ER. Dividing it by the 5 people in their group, each member will get around 7 million ER. Sungmin questions if he should proceed with working with them since, although an opportunity like that doesn't come by often, he is unsure if he should trust unfamiliar people. Sungmin agrees to work with them, and Woon is elated by his decision. Sungmin then asks about the 2 sad-looking men sitting in the corner. Woon tells him that they are just mules, nobodies with no class. They carry the bags they need for the expedition, and they are paid with the money left over. Sungmin and the group are traveling to accomplish the orc mission. Sungmin asks how many orcs there are in the village, and Do responds that there are around 50, but they probably only have to fight around 30. He says that there is nothing too dangerous about the mission since orcs are dull and stupid, so they just have to rush in and kill them. Woon explains their plan, saying that they will split into two teams, with Woon and Sungmin in one team and the rest in the other. Their plan is that they will lure the orcs outside of the village, then divide and conquer. Rainier will help by spreading their scent with her magic. Do's group will be in hiding and ambush the orcs when they come rushing out, while Sungmin and Woon will light the flare and lure the rest of the orcs out. Sungmin thinks that the plan is okay but a little crude. He thinks that it would be better to lay a trap, but considering their numbers, it's not realistic. They close in on the orcs' territory and they split up. They have been walking for almost half a day now, and Sungmin starts to take pity on the mule carrying their luggage. He asks the mule what his name is. He tells Sungmin that he is Brass. He tells Brass up front that he isn't confident if he will be able to protect him when the orcs start rushing out, so he gives him the choice to run away or continue following them. Brass says that he cannot run away, so Sungmin just reminds him to protect himself. They have reached the area and can see the wooden fence in the middle of the trees. Before Woon sets off the flare, Sungmin takes out a large jar of water from his interdimensional pocket. Woon asks him what the purpose of this is, and he responds by saying that the water is to create mud that they will rub on their bodies to mask their scent. Woon sets off the flare, and the orcs take notice. Woon then suggests an idea, saying that they send out the pack mule first. He says that it would be more effective if they sent the pack mule out first to divert attention. Brass is shocked by this plan, pointing out that he might die, but Woon brushes it off, saying that he won't die. He then threatens Brass, saying that if he won't come forward, he will kill him himself, but then he brushes it off again, saying that he's only joking. Sungmin then steps up and offers to go ahead first. Around 13 orcs have been lured out, and Sungmin makes the first move to attack. He begins to question why he offered to come out first, since he isn't friends with Brass and there is no grand connection between them, but they are both no class. He found a common sympathy there in following the rule, the strong are the law. He then remembers his training with Hoyan and the way he taught him how to hold a spear and to stab from a distance. He uses the soul-chasing spear technique in its third form to take out multiple orcs. Woon comes in to help take out the other orcs. An orc comes in and attacks Brass, but Sungmin is able to save him in the nick of time. They start cutting and collecting the dead orc's ears. Woon thanks Sungmin for his help in accomplishing the mission. He tosses the bag of orc ears to Brass and tells him to make sure that he gets everything. They start to regroup with the others, and while walking, Brass thanks Sungmin. Sungmin's group arrives and meets up with the other group. They say that they ended everything easily a long time ago. Do asks them if they got into trouble on their end, but Woon reassures them that they were able to take care of things quickly thanks to Sungmin. He then says that the real problem starts now. Suddenly, Wang tosses a dagger into Rainier's chest, killing her. Woon approaches to take out Do, but Sungmin stops him before he can. In a flashback from Sungmin's previous life, he is working as a mule for a group. They see a crowd of people gathering around an execution. They take a closer look to see that the one being executed is a mercenary from the Merim. The mercenary went on a mission and killed all of his allies to take all the money for himself, but he got caught doing it, so that's why he is being executed. Back in the present, Sungmin is trying to fight off Woon. He finally recognizes who Woon is. He is the person who got executed for killing his allies in his past life. He is a second-rate martial artist, so he is a formidable opponent, but Sungmin can still read the flow of his movements. Sungmin is able to get a small nick on Woon's chest. Woon steps back to avoid getting a deeper cut. He thinks he was able to avoid a killing hit, but he then starts coughing up blood. The spear was poisoned. After being weakened, Woon decides to change his strategy. He goes after Brass and threatens to kill him if Sungmin makes another move. He thought that he would have some sympathy for Brass, but his efforts didn't work. Sungmin had worked as a mercenary for years during his past life. The only reason he helped the Brass was that they were both no class. Brass suddenly fights back. Using the weight of his body, he crushes Woon's body onto the ground. Woon stabs Brass, killing him, but Sungmin returns the favor and kills Woon. Meanwhile, Du has killed Wang. Woon and Wang took them to the Mercenary Guild, where Du and Sungmin split the 35 million ER from the mission reward, as well as the loot they earned. Sungmin returns to the inn, and he is greeted by Hoyan. He plopped onto his bed, tired from all the work he had done during the day. He thinks about how Brass wouldn't have died if he had just a little bit more energy. Hoi-an then asks him if he killed someone. Sung-min asks him how he knew, and he responds that he could tell from the smell of human blood on him. He explains that it was a second-rate martial artist who tried to kill him, so he killed him instead. Hoi-an tells Sung-min that he is hiding something and asks him what he is hiding. Sung-min then questions why Hoi-an is asking about what he could possibly be hiding. He asks Hoi-an if he is saying that it is strange for someone like him with no accomplishments to have beat a second-rate martial artist. Hoi-an then says that this is not what he meant when asking the question. He says that Sung-min is special. As Hoi-an has been wandering in the city, he has been trying to understand the world. He had seen many things, and he's come to know of the no-class situation that most of them are wretched. But on the first day Sung-min was summoned, he went straight out into the forest and hunted monsters. Sung-min then asks Hoi-an if that really is strange, since surviving would be difficult if he hadn't done that. Hoi-an then says that that would be true logically, but then he points out that other classes aren't doing so because they aren't aware of it. He then points out that despite being only 14 years old, Sung-min was able to put his life on the line and slay another being, but Sung-min just says that he adapted quickly. Hoi-an tells him that he is good at dodging questions, so he tells him his second suspicion. He tells him that he has no talent, since when he teaches him a 10, he is only able to learn up to about 3 or 4. Another strange thing that he points out is that Sung-min has only used a spear for less than 2 months, but his skills are already quite good. To be capable of learning martial arts at such great speeds in only 2 months, Hoi-an questions who Sung-min really is. Sung-min gets up and tells him that he doesn't know what he is talking about, but Hoi-an retaliates, telling him that he doesn't like people who lie to him. Sung-min tells him that everyone has a secret they want to keep hidden, and the person who is trying to find that out is the bad guy in the situation, so he asks Hoi-an if that is what a friend is to him. After hearing this, Hoi-an offers to tell him his secret in return for his, but Sung-min tells him that he has no need for his. He then offers his secret, along with an incomparable martial arts technique on top of it. He gets desperate, asking Sung-min what he wants in return for his secret, but he doesn't seem to budge. Hoi-an makes another offer, saying that he will give Sung-min 20% of his internal energy. Sung-min is shocked and asks Hoi-an why he would offer such a thing, and he responds saying that he is curious and that Sung-min is his one and only friend, and that is why he wants to know everything about his friend, even his secrets, because that is what a friend is to him. Sung-min asks him to promise him one thing: if he tells him his secret, he won't kill him. After making the deal, Hoi-an offers to share his secret with him first. He reveals that he is actually a girl. Sung-min is in complete shock after hearing this. Her father wanted that for the sect, since only men can become the cult leader in the demonic cult. He told her to live as a boy since he wanted her to follow that path. Sung-min is still in disbelief that Hoi-an is actually a girl. After she had shared her secret, she asked Sung-min for his, but he asked her to give him a minute so he could gather his thoughts and told her that they should use different rooms from tomorrow onward. He then tells her his secret, that he is a regressor, but she is too confused to understand what that means. After much-needed explanation, Hoi-an is now able to understand that Sung-min died and regressed to the past. She then asks him why he thinks she would kill him after knowing this. He says that although he is 14 years old on the outside, his mental age is 27. He asks her if she feels bad knowing that he deceived her into thinking they were the same age, but she says that it is not a problem for her. She tells him that from the start, she was the one who approached him, she was the one who told him to learn martial arts from her, and she was the one who wanted to be friends. So in fact, he didn't deceive her, he just went along with what she wanted. So she has no reason to kill him or end their friendship. She tells him that they had spent 2 months together, so she acknowledged him as a friend for that entire time, since that is what a friend is for her. After hearing the much-needed reassurance, he thanks her, but then she comments, saying that it is a bit sad that this is the level he reached between 2 lives and decades of experience. The condescending comment seems to have killed Sung-min inside. She then tells him that she will transfer her internal energy to him. Internal energy is the energy accumulated in the body of the martial artist. Martial artists would use this energy to demonstrate superhuman abilities because there are limited means to improve one's internal energy except with cultivation techniques. All martial artists would spend their entire lives honing their internal energy and gradually increasing the amount they have because it is so precious. Hoi-an begins transferring her internal energy to Sung-min. She tells him that from now on, she will transfer 20% of her internal energy, but it is up to him how much he will retain out of the remaining 20%. He seems to be in pain during the energy transfer. After the transfer was complete, she asked him how he felt. She seems tired after the transfer and rests on his shoulder. He seems to have been able to retain about half of the energy that Hoyan had transferred. She tells him that if he keeps using the Violet Dawn mystic art, then he can make the energy his own. She collapses on the bed, all sweaty and tired, so Sungmin asks her if she is okay. She tells him that she's fine and that she's just tired. He then asks her why she is doing so much for him, and to that, she responds by saying that they are friends. She reassures him that she wants nothing from him and that she had just done the transfer for her own satisfaction. She then tells him that she will teach him a suitable spear technique. He is shocked that she is still willing to teach him more. She explains that the Supreme 9 Heavenly Spear that the Spear King used 100 years ago should be fine. She tells him that for her first friend that she made, she can't let him die in vain like he did in his previous life. He thanks her for everything she has taught and given him, but she punches him for bowing to her. They talked about many things that night, and so a month went by. The two are practicing martial arts, and Hoyan asks to see how much he has learned in the past month, but all he could think was that Hoyan was going to leave after their last sparring session together. She tells him that she will give him a 20 moves head start. In a flashback, Hoyan tells Sungmin that the method to make the Supreme 9 Heavens Spear suitable for him is called the Supreme 9 Heavens Spear Sungmin style. He asks why she had to do that, and she says that she improved it for him, so it was only right that she put his name in it. In the technique that he used, it has been combined with the soul-chasing technique's moves. He attempts to use the soul-chasing killing strike first, but Hoyan is easily able to deflect his attack. She dodges his next attack with ease. He had used 3 moves already. Compared to the days when Sungmin didn't know anything, his spear techniques contain more parry, hold, and pierce moves now. Parry spins outward and bounces off the opponent's attack. Hold is to rotate inward and press down to block one's opponent's attack. Pierce means to stab one's opponent. These are the basics of spearmanship. After learning the basics and practicing for the past month, Sungmin's skills had greatly improved. Sungmin continues his efforts to land a clean attack on her, but she continues to be unfazed by his techniques. He had advanced to the second rate with the internal energy that he had received, but she is parrying it all with her right hand alone. Attack after attack, Hoyan blocks and parries all of them with little effort needed, but with his last move, he is able to land a hit on Hoyan and take her by surprise. But that was his 20th attack, so Hoyan is going on the offensive. She appears behind him and attacks. He lost, but she compliments him, saying that he did well, but Sungmin says that what she is saying is nonsense since she blocked most of his attacks with just her right hand. But she reassures him that he has developed a good sense and even says that he was born to do martial arts. She tells him that she will look forward to 10 years from now. She tells him that their sparring was too easy, but she is satisfied with his skills and that he has displayed as much as she's taught him, so she tells him that they will meet again in 10 years. She then asks him if he has decided on a goal in life, but he says that he still doesn't know yet. Since that is the case, Hoyan asks Sungmin to make her his goal. As she explains, she says that humans need to have goals, and if one doesn't have a goal, their life would be nothing short of just drifting around. She tells him to become strong enough to fight her 10 years from now. He tells her that there is no way that can be done because, to him, just because he will make her his goal doesn't mean that he can become like her. He breaks down and lashes out, asking her not to say anything irresponsible and saying that he cannot make it because he is not talented. He says that achieving the same strength as her is impossible for him. She then scolds him for his disgusting sense of inferiority. She says that she hates that about him, how his inferiority complex in his past life holds him back. This greatly angers Sungmin, who continues lashing out, saying that he was summoned to Iria with just his hands and no talent. He tells her that he lived such a lowly life, even when he finally died in the end. She tells him that now that he has been able to learn the mystic arts, he has been able to become a second-rate warrior in just 3 months, as if he's gotten a second chance, but now he is possessed by a sense of inferiority from his previous life. He gets seriously mad at all the comments Hoyan has been making and tells her to shut up. He cannot believe that he is being lectured by a 13-year-old child. He accepts her offer, makes her his goal, and vows to train so that 10 years from now, he will be sure to put a spear through her heart. She then brushes it off, saying that she will die if he does so and that he shouldn't do that to a friend. The tension between them seems to have eased. She tells him that they should just spar instead. She says that she is looking forward to the sparring between them in 10 years. From then on, Lee Sung-min decided on 3 goals. The first is to survive, and the second is to seize opportunities through memories of his previous life. Hoyeon bids farewell to Sung-min, telling him that they will see each other in 10 years. His third goal is Wiji Hoyeon. There are 3 things Sung-min can get from Senevis during this period: the martial skeleton, the pure heavenly cultivation technique, and the no-class tournament. Senevis regularly holds tournaments. Sung-min wants to participate in the no-class tournament that only those with no class can participate in. It had been 10 months since Hoyeon left. Sung-min goes to sign up for the tournament, but he gets approached by a man with a beaten-up face. The man tells him that he is a third-rate warrior, so he should just give up, but Sung-min is unfazed by this and punches him away. During the past 10 months, Sung-min's martial arts have become first-rate. It was easy for him to win the no-class tournament where the small fries gathered, and for the prize for the championship, he obtained the Sacred Energy Elixir that enhances internal energy. Sung-min took the Sacred Energy Elixir on the spot. The Sacred Energy Elixir that enhances internal energy was a little lacking even after receiving Hoyeon's internal energy. With this, he got everything he could get from Senevis. Hans Ajasi, the man Sung-min got his items from, pays him a visit. He congratulates him for winning the tournament and then asks him what he wants to buy from him, but Sung-min tells him that he is there to say goodbye to him. He thanks Hans, saying that he got to where he was because of his help. As a parting gift, Hans hands him a dimensional pouch. He says that the capacity of the pouch is 1.5 times bigger than the one he currently has. Sung-min asks him why he is giving him such a precious item, and Hans tells him to just take the gift. He even says that it is all worn out, so he doubts that he could sell it for much. He tells him that if he wants to pay him back, he should become famous, pay him back 100 times, and go spread the word all over area that when he was a rookie, he was indebted to Hans, a street vendor. Sung-min heads back to the inn and bumps into Lula. She asks him if he is really leaving, and to that, he asks her how she found out. She tells him that if he had tidied up his room so much, she wouldn't have noticed. Lulu seems to be saddened by the news that Sung-min has to leave, so she tells him that she hopes he dies a gruesome death somewhere then, and she walks off crying. Jack, the inn owner and Lula's father, asks Sung-min to please understand her daughter's outburst and that her daughter is still young. Jack hands Sung-min a parting gift, a cape that he used to wear when he was young. It might not look good, but Jack tells him that there's temperature maintenance magic and sword magic, so it should be quite useful. Sung-min leaves the inn, but he is halted by the sound of Lula's voice calling his name. She is tired from running to catch up to him and takes a minute to catch her breath. She tells him that she takes it back. She takes back what she had told him earlier, and she asks him not to die. She asks him to come back to the city if he can't take it anymore. She then confesses that it was weird that, from a certain moment on, she started to look at him, but she didn't know why. At some point in time, she just happened to start liking him. She is brought to tears, unable to process that Sung-min is going to leave, but Sung-min reassures her that he won't die. The two say their goodbyes to each other and finally part ways. It took him 3 years to graduate from Senevis in his previous life, but in his new life, it only took him a year, and while he didn't have any good memories in his last life, this time he made a lot of precious memories. He wonders if someday he will be able to come back to the city. At Mershi's Mountain, he is welcomed by a guard and asked what kind of prohibition he would like to receive. He is reminded by himself that to survive, he needs to become stronger. A year has passed since Sung-min and Hoyeon parted ways, so there are still 9 years until they will meet once again. He wonders where he should wander off for now. He considers becoming a mercenary again, but he would end up living the same life as he did in the past. He considers training on Mershi's Mountain. Mershi is the higher being of Iria that is in charge of trials and tribulations. Mershi's Mountain is the territory of a higher being. By applying prohibitions to one's senses and body, one can achieve a training efficiency that is several hundred times more effective. Sung-min arrives at Mershi's Mountain and is currently training under the prohibitions given to him by the priest. He received 2 prohibitions. The first one is the prohibition of weight. It is simply a prohibition where everything feels heavy. It also affects his body and the items that he has on. The second prohibition is the sense of taste. Everything that goes into his mouth will taste disgusting. Not only the taste, but also the texture of food. From the bread he had chewed, he could feel a wriggling insect's body. He hadn't known the training would be as harsh as it was, and he even considered quitting. He begins contemplating if what he's doing is even necessary, but he remembers Hoyan and gets reminded of his motivation and goal. He grabs his bread and gulps it down, trying his best to endure the taste and texture of insects in his mouth. He tries to wash it down with water, but even the water tastes like feces. A mysterious voice whispers into his ear, calling him an insolent human. Sungmin turns to see who is speaking, but there is no one there. A week has passed, and Sungmin is hunting down a wild deer. He dashes in to attack it, but the prohibition on weight is preventing him from killing the deer. The deer ends up fleeing. Sungmin only had bread and water for a week, so he doesn't have enough nutrients. On this mountain, one must take care of everything by themselves, including clothing, food, and shelter, while observing the prohibitions. That in itself is the trial of mercy. The mountain is harsh. Not only is the daily temperature range huge, but the beasts are strong and fast too. Because of the prohibition on weight, Sungmin is unable to hunt, and because of the prohibition on taste, he won't be able to eat. He has been living like this for a week, and he is in the worst shape. He was planning on training there for at least 2 years, but even if the training efficiency increases, it is a waste of time if he can't train because he's become too weak. He notices a woman with short white hair standing near him from the side. He asks her who she is, but she just shows a hand sign for peace. He is confident enough that he is able to trust this stranger because there is a prohibition in the Mountains of Mercy that states that practitioners cannot harm each other. He asks her one more time for her name, but she doesn't respond. She points to the symbol of a hat on her neck. It seems that she has a voice prohibition, which prevents her from speaking. She tosses him a dead deer, the one from earlier that escaped. She tells him, through writing in the dirt, that she has been watching him for a few days, and from what she has observed, he will die if he doesn't improve his eating. That is why she is helping him. He thanks her, but he asks her what she wants in return, and she tells him that she doesn't want anything from him and that she is only helping him out of kindness. The woman who suddenly appeared in front of Sungmin helped him, and she introduced herself as a kind person. Every time he was in trouble, she appeared and helped. He asked her for her name, and he couldn't help but be surprised to learn that she is Baek Sogo. It was a name he knew from his previous life. It was someone famous. She was known as Baek Sogo the Flash because of her ability to perform movement techniques as fast as a flash. But the reason why Sungmin was surprised wasn't because he had met a future celebrity. He was surprised because in his past life, Baek Soho died 8 years in the future, in the hands of the little heavenly demon, Wiji Hoyan. Mercy's Mountain has 3 rules. Practitioners will receive prohibitions. For every 6 months of their stay in the mountains, they need to receive another prohibition, and practitioners cannot harm each other. While Sungmin is resting and spacing out, Baek suddenly appears beside him, taking him by surprise. She communicates with him by making indents on the rocks with her bare finger. She tells him that she was worried he might have starved again, so she came to him to take a look. He thanks her for the concern, but then asks her if she can use sound transmission to communicate since she is of a high martial arts level. She explains that she cannot use sound transmission since her current prohibition prevents her from doing so. He then asks about the symbol on her left arm. She explains that it's a new prohibition since it has been half a year since she resided in the mountains. She has been having a hard time since she cannot feel her left arm at all. She asks Sungmin if his prohibition was against taste and waste, and he responds by saying yes. Sungmin then asks her what other kinds of prohibitions other practitioners have. She notices that Sungmin has become curious about other practitioners, so she takes him to them. Sungmin was about to thank her for the offer, but she dashed into the forest before he could even finish his sentence. She dashes back, forgetting that he has a weight restriction, so he will have difficulty keeping up. She advises him to focus more on movement techniques since his body is heavy. He then asks her if she could teach him some movement techniques, but she tells him that no matter how kind she is, she can't give him what she uses to make a living. She grabs him and carries him on her shoulder since he is too slow and will have difficulty catching up with her. They meet up with the other practitioners, and the first thing that Sungmin notices is the smell. Scarlet Laser is a future grand magician, and her prohibition is washing up and changing clothes. which would explain the putrid smell. Jun is a future sword phantom, and his prohibition is on his left and right eyes. Baek tells Sungmin that only 4 have been training on the mountain for more than half a year. Sungmin is shocked by the lineup of people in front of him. All of them will be big shots in the future. Although they are still unknown, they will soon make a name for themselves throughout area. Scarlet asks him what his prohibitions are and is shocked to hear that he has 2, despite only beginning. Bai then comments, saying that it was probably because Sungmin is in pursuit of power and wants to overcome his limitations. He tells Sungmin that all kinds of random people gather on the mountain, but only 4 remain after trying to overcome their limits for more than half a year. He says that he will keep an eye on Sungmin to see how long he can hold out. Baek then tells everyone that they should all go back since they have already met each other. Sungmin is confused and points out that they mentioned that there have been 4 people who have trained in the mountains for over half a year, but he has only met 3 of them so far. Bai then tells him that he mustn't visit Flam, saying that he is too dangerous. 4 months had passed since Sungmin began training in the mountains. By the time he got used to it, the prohibitions had become more severe. His body would become heavier and the food would taste worse, but he noticed himself getting stronger. After 4 months of training, the achievement of his Violet Dawn mystic art went up to 3 stars. Even though he had a low-grade skeleton correction, his growth is incredibly fast. The mountain is most definitely harsh, but the trial is definitely rewarding. During the day, he would use the Supreme 9 Heavens Spear, sung in style, and at night, he would use the Violet Dawn mystic art. His body still feels heavy, and food still tastes disgusting to him, but he spends every moment of every day fruitfully. With every step he takes, he feels like his bones are about to break, and his muscles feel like they are tearing up every time he swings his spear. But he has to do it for his goal. He also takes notice of how much his body has grown and realizes that he cannot wear his clothes any longer. Someone suddenly appears, taking notice of Sungmin as a newbie in the mountains. He compliments him on his spear techniques. He tells him that it is his first time seeing someone his age in the mountains and introduces himself. He is Flaky. Flam approaches Sungmin and asks him why he is getting so nervous. Flam assumes from Sungmin's reaction that he has heard rumors about him. He asks him to come and say hello since he needs a friend his age, but Sungmin declines the offer, saying that he needs to train. Sungmin walks off, but he notices that the spear he was carrying has disappeared from his side. He turns back to see that Flam has stolen his spear. Sungmin is shocked since he hadn't even noticed his spear being taken until Flam pointed it out. The greatest humiliation a martial artist can suffer is being deprived of their weapon. Before Sungmin could even get mad, he fell into confusion, wondering how Flam was able to steal his spear. Flam tells Sungmin that he is only temporarily borrowing his spear and will return it to him after he uses it a little. Just by oboe-serving Sungmin, Flam is able to mimic the technique he used earlier, the Supreme 9 Heavens Spear, Sungmin style. He claims he had never used a spear before, but from what Sungmin had seen, he was able to display incredible skill with his spear. He even wonders if Hoyan is capable of Flam's level of skill. Flam then rants about why everyone comes to the mountain to train hard when, no matter how hard everyone tries, he can catch up with them just by looking at them. Flam then asks Sungmin why everyone can't do it like him and why people train so hard even though they can't do it. Sungmin is shocked by the sheer arrogance Flam is displaying. He tells Sungmin that the other people in the mountains get mad at him and kick him out whenever he asks them the same question. Sungmin gets shocked hearing this, since the other practitioners he had met already looked like exceptional geniuses to him, but Flam is able to overshadow them easily. He then asks Sungmin what his prohibitions are, but he just ignores him and walks away. Flam continues to persist, but he doesn't get Sungmin's attention until he tells him about his spear. This gets Sungmin mad, and he starts lashing out, yelling at Flam, telling him to get lost and not come near him again. Flam seems unfazed and tells him that he doesn't think he did anything wrong. Fed up with Flam's cocky attitude, Sungmin attempts to attack him, but the prohibition prevents anyone from getting hurt. Flam continues to be cocky around Sungmin, which just makes him even more mad. Baek appears from behind Flam, and he tells her that he was just returning Sungmin's spear to him. He then gives Sungmin a backhanded compliment, calling his technique amazing but telling him that he is not good at using it. He rubs salt on the wound and even says that he is not sure if he is able to train up to 6 stars with his talent. He gives him some advice, saying that on the mountain, the harder the prohibition, the greater the blessings the higher deity of trials, Mershi, will give. He continues lecturing Sungmin, but Baek shuts him up before he can continue. Sungmin runs away from them, upset by what Flam has told him. Baek tries to call for him, but her prohibition prevents her from speaking. Sungmin is biting down on his lip, crying and calling for Mershi. She appears and asks him what he wants. He asks for another prohibition. He is teleported into a weird dimension, with Mershi standing in front of him. She imitates herself and tells Sungmin to stop screaming her name earlier. She points out how he already has 2 prohibitions, but he can't even handle them, yet he still wants to add another one. Sungmin reassures her that he is able to handle a 3rd prohibition. Mershi then asks him if he is able to show such bravado after returning from death. He is shocked to hear this and asks her how she was able to know. She tells him that a higher being's eyes see through the causality of a mortal, and every mortal is destined to die when they are born. Going against death is the essence of causality. She explains that those who defy that law and break the boundaries of their destinies are called transcendental beings. But Sungmin is not a transcendental being, yet he has twisted the bondage of causality. Even though he died, he came back to the past and lived again. He then asks her if his causality being off course impacts him negatively in any way. Mershi explains that all existence has cause and effect. It is natural, but for some reason, Sungmin defied death, and in the process, his soul will suffer tremendous karma, but it will not affect him while he is alive. She says that after he dies, he will suffer for hundreds of millions of hours. Meanwhile, Baek finds Sungmin in the forest and asks him if he added a prohibition. Sungmin says that he did and apologizes for making her worry. She asks him what kind of prohibition he added, and he says he added warmth in dreams. Baek then calls him crazy, reminding him that the prohibition of senses and abstract concepts is even more severe. The prohibition of warmth has given him endless chills. No matter how close he got to the fire, the chills throughout his body did not stop. The prohibition of dreams, his memories from Earth, his parents, the horrors of his childhood, his anxiety, all of them manifested in the worst form, polluting his dreams. Sleeping for him was no longer comfortable. The prohibition took his rest away. She starts scolding him for doing something so reckless. He then tells her that the reason he added more prohibitions was because he had no talent. Baek then realizes that despite Sungmin's achievements in martial arts, which are great for his age, he is growing much slower as compared to the number of prohibitions he has. From the disharmony between his talent and skills, it is true that he is not talented. He tells her that he has a goal and that it is hard to reach it with the current talent he has. It is not something that he did because he got angry after he saw Flam, and Flam just showed him what he needed to do. In order for Sungmin to stand side by side with guys who have extraordinary talents that are out of common sense, he also has to do things that are out of common sense. Baek then begins to sympathize with Sungmin, telling him that she knows how he feels. Her goal is to become the strongest woman in the world. She then remembers how he asked her for movement techniques, and Sungmin tells her he was just joking when he asked her that, but she offers to teach him. She hands him her secret manual. The martial art is both a movement technique and a mystic art, and it is all that she has learned about movement techniques. Its name is Shadowless Flight. From reading the first few chapters, Sungmin observed that it was a martial art that was comparable to the Violet Dawn mystic art and the Supreme Nine Heavens Spear. He asks her why she is giving him the manual. She responds by saying that she doesn't know, but she says that she thinks he is someone who doesn't give up easily. She says it might be from sympathy or just because she is kind. Sungmin dreams about sparring with Hoi-yeon the next time they see each other, but he is worried about disappointing Hoi-yeon and not being able to achieve his goal even after 10 years of hard work. She tells him that it was a mistake for her to have taught him martial arts, and the 10 years of hope and efforts were wasted. She tells him that he doesn't need to do anything anymore. She destroys his dantian, so he won't be able to use martial arts anymore. She bids farewell and walks away. He calls for her to stop as his body slowly deteriorates into the soil, but she just walks away, unfazed and unbothered. He wakes up from his dream, frightened. He checks to make sure that everything that had just happened was a dream. Scarlet asks him who Wiji Hoi-yeon is. She asks him if she is his girlfriend. Scarlett's sudden appearance startles Sungmin. She then asks him about the rumor about him adding 2 more prohibitions. Sungmin seems to be more startled by her smell than anything else at the moment. She checks the underside of his eyelids and sees that he has the prohibition of dreams. Sungmin's eyes hurt because of the strong scent coming from Scarlett. She also tells him that she heard he took on the prohibition of warmth. She is shocked that he chose the toughest prohibitions and tells him that he will die soon because of this. Sungmin starts throwing up, and Scarlett asks him if he's okay. Dokbi tells her it is because she got close to him. Sungmin apologizes for throwing up and asks them why they are with him. Scarlett says that they are there to help. She tells him that Baek asked them to help Sungmin out. Scarlett brought him magic scrolls so he could learn magic. Sungmin begins training with Dokbi. First, he uses mental clarity. It purifies the mind that has been contaminated with nightmares. The second magic that he used is a simple magic that can make him stronger and faster. It is very helpful when enduring the weight prohibition. The third magic is fatigue recovery. It is important to recover from fatigue. Overuse will lead to the depletion of his life force, which can be fatal. By the end of their training, Sungmin wasn't able to last 100 seconds against a blind old man. Sungmin promises that he will do better next time, but he starts trembling and getting sick. It is the prohibition of warmth that makes him feel cold. Dokbi does something on Sungmin's body to relieve him of his discomfort. He pressed on Sungmin's blood vessels to boost his metabolism. They part ways, and Dokbi tells Sungmin to take care of himself. Sungmin reminisces about his experiences after regressing. Compared to his past life, so many people have helped him. He then realizes that after he regressed, people were a lot friendlier to him. Iria's past life wasn't such a warm-hearted place, so he wonders what happened. Scarlett approaches Dokbi and tells him that once they get out of the mountain, she will burn him to a crisp. She is offended because he was so harsh with her just because she didn't bathe for a few days. She changes the topic and asks him if he just came back from sparring with Sungmin. He says that although Sungmin is slow, he is getting better little by little. Scarlett jokes about how Dokbi is so eager to help Sungmin out despite only caring about martial arts. He says that it is just because he was asked to help. He then asks her the same question. Why was she so willing to help Sungmin out? She says she doesn't know why. She says that when she sees him, she just can't leave him alone. Sungmin stops overthinking and just appreciates that he got lucky in his new life. Half a year has passed, and while training, Flam appears. He calls Sungmin a larva and tells him that he didn't expect him to last half a year. Sungmin tries to ignore him, but Flam continues to persist in getting a response out of him. Flam notices that Sungmin has taken the prohibition of voice. He laughs at him for choosing the most convenient prohibition. He thought Sungmin wanted harsh prohibitions. To stop him from pestering him, Sungmin attacks him with his spear, but only barely so as not to actually hit him. Sungmin is a completely different person than she was half a year ago. His parry, hold, and pierce are all very cleanly done. The movement techniques he learned from Baek have worked very well with him too. Despite his accomplishments, Flam still insults him, saying that he hasn't achieved much, even though he already has 5 prohibitions. Sungmin continues to ignore him and proceeds with his training. Flam gets a hold of his spear and asks him why he is ignoring him. Sungmin asks him if he has anything to do. Flam tells him that this won't do and that Sungmin cannot look down on him. Sungmin seems unfazed by this threat, but he tells him that he can't do anything about it. Using Sungmin's spear, Flam hits him. He then starts laughing at how pathetic he is. The prohibition doesn't seem to restrict indirect injuries. Flam starts making condescending comments towards Sungmin, saying that he can't even do sword chi, a technique that allows martial artists at peak level and above to unfuse their weapons with their internal energy to increase their destructive power dramatically. He tells him that he would probably not be able to achieve the technique. Flam continues mocking him, saying that Sungmin still has to work hard to get where he wants, but he can get there easily. He asks him if he still plans to continue despite his efforts being so meaningless. Sungmin responds, saying that there is no end to despair if he just keeps dwelling on the fact that he is not talented, and he even thanks Flam for coming to him because he was getting bored of training. He tells Flam to continue being arrogant because someday he will put a spear inside his confident body. Just from the pure aura infused into the spear, Flam is able to completely disintegrate a tree. He tells Sungmin that he looks forward to the day that he sees him giving up and crying. A month passes and Sungmin becomes a one-year practitioner. It was time for him to choose a new prohibition. He chooses hearing. This prohibition has filled his ears with terrible noises that he can't get used to. He has 6 prohibitions now, and although he was on the verge of death every day, he still swung his spear every day without fail. He continued to perfect his techniques, and he continued sparring with Dokbi, learning new techniques from Baek. Scarlet didn't do much compared to the others. The stronger Sungmin became, the more severe his prohibitions were. His body became heavier, the taste of food became more nasty, his dreams became more intense, greater chills enveloped his body, and the sounds in his ears became worse. In some instances, it was actually comfortable for him because it blocked the nuisance of phlegm that would sometimes appear. Sungmin continued to improve. Sungmin got summoned to Mershi's space. He asks her why he was summoned, since there was still more time left before he needed to add a new prohibition. She had summoned him to congratulate him on overcoming her trial. Sungmin asks her what trial she is talking about, and Phlegm appears. She tells him that Phlegm's existence in itself is a trial. Sungmin is starting to understand now. Baek, Scarlet, and Dokbi, who trained for more than half a year on the mountain, all became strong and reputable people in area from what he remembered in his past life, but he had never heard about Phlegm. As a trial, Phlegm makes the practitioners despair. Baek, Scarlet, and Dokbi, even though they were very talented, would look at Phlegm and fall into despair. They were busy turning their heads and running away, but Sungmin, despite being untalented, didn't avoid him but instead made him his goal. Phlegm wasn't able to make him despair despite all his efforts. Mershi says that is all, and she asks him not to reveal the identity of Phlegm to other practitioners or else he will taste the wrath of a higher being. She asks him if he will continue training on the mountain, and he says that he will. She tells him that the reward for overcoming her trial will be given to him when he leaves the mountain. She then proposes that if he gives her his soul, she will grant him unimaginable strength, but Sungmin tells her that he doesn't need that kind of trade. After declining her offer, she asks him if he will continue to crawl slowly and work hard. Sungmin really hated the word effort. The starting point is different. No matter how hard he tries, he can't keep up with geniuses, but being a genius doesn't mean that one doesn't have to put in effort. In the end, he hated those who dismissed the difference between what happened and what didn't happen just by attributing it to a lack of effort. But at the same time, he yearned for the word effort. In his previous life, he made defeatism his refuge without making any real effort. He had a lot of fateful encounters. He made no more excuses for having a different starting point. Having lost his refuge, he had no choice but to move forward. It was only now that he started to put in the effort. So now, he will try to squirm until the end. Mershi begins rambling. She says that there is no such thing as a coincidence in Area. There is a reason for everything. Area summons otherworlders from other dimensions while giving benefits in the form of skills, but asks for what reason it could be for. Sungmin feels like her rambling is directed at him for some reason. As if she is saying something to him that she shouldn't, she seems to be trying to convey it indirectly. She says that if he is back, then it means that something is about to happen that requires him to come back. She tells him that if he is going to go back, he needs to get ready to be worthy of the reason for regressing. Something is intervening in Mershi's space. She tells Sungmin that he should go back and finish his training. She sends him off, and she wonders if he is able to stop the fate of the world. A few days had passed, and the 6th prohibition that was chosen for him was the sense of smell. The smell of Scarlet's nose that came from the top of her head kept stimulating his nose. Baek appears beside Sungmin and asks him if she should not choose the prohibition of smell. Sungmin then tells her that since the harsher the prohibition, the better it is to gain power, other than feeling disgusted at times when he swallows saliva and the occasional vomiting, he is all right. Baek's new prohibitions were for taste and hearing. The pain of having her senses all over the place, compared with what she had endured previously, was a much more terrible experience for her. She tells him that she now understands the hardships that Sungmin has been through. The prohibition of senses was worse than what she had expected. She tells him that she has something to say to him. She will be departing the mountain soon. Baek Soko does not have to go through so much suffering, as she is well within the ranks of geniuses. She has been in the mountains for 2 years. She asks Sungmin when he plans on leaving, and he says that he plans on staying a little longer. He asks her if they will be able to meet again, and she reassures him that she is sure they will. It has been a year since they met, and Sungmin is now as tall as her. If she leaves now, Sungmin might die since he will keep taking prohibitions while overstraining himself. She hasn't finished teaching him the Shala's soul flight, so she wonders if she should stay for a little more. But without even hearing a word from her, Sungmin reassures her that he will be all right. He tells her that because of her, he has been able to hang for so long in the mountains, and now he can pull his own weight. He is aware that Baek has something she needs to do, so he can't let her stay in the mountains because of him. He thanks her once more for her help. The two begin to part, and they give their final thanks to each other. Baek tells him not to die, and he reassures her that he will never die. And like that, Baek had left. Bai and Scarlet soon left the mountain as well. It has been a while since Sungmin felt a sense of loneliness. He remembers the cautious side of him from the early days of his past life. He believed in no one, but now he knows that humans can't live alone. Without his dear friends, he wouldn't be alive. Something has changed in his heart. An unseen wall in it fell apart, and at that moment, there was no odor, no weight, and no noise. The sense of freedom was fleeting, yet it felt like it lasted for eternity. The usual scenery looks different to him for some reason. Summer came, and the cicadas are beginning to cry. 7 years later, Baek will meet Hoyen at the dungeon and be killed by her. In order to repay Baek's kindness to him, he has to stop that from happening. Cicada larvae spend 10 years in the ground before becoming cicadas. He only has 7 years to prevent the disaster. He wonders how he can become strong in 7 years. He even wonders if he is capable of doing it, but he is persistent. Even though the level of his martial arts increased day by day, it still wasn't enough. He wanted more and increased the intensity each day. He cut back on his sleep and swung the spear with the time he had saved from sleeping. More time had passed, and Sungmin added another prohibition, the one of vision. The world became dark for him. The only sense that Sungmin could still rely on was touch. After a week had passed, he could move little by little. The only thing he could hear in the black world were ear-splitting noises. At some point in time, the noises started to sound like a cicada's cry. Within the sound of the cicada's cries, Sungmin forgot the flow of time. He just kept swinging his spear, and his body began to use martial arts automatically, and he began thinking more. He thought of what he wanted to become. He wonders what he wants to become and why he regressed. The season has changed, and the temperature of the wind that he can feel on his skin has changed. His daily life hasn't changed. He is at Mercy's space, and he tells her that he wishes to stop the trial. All the prohibitions on his body have disappeared, and Mercy asks him how it feels to have his senses back after a long time. He is glad to have them back. It gives him a great sense of freedom. She then tells him that she doesn't know what kind of reward she should give him. He has spent 3 years on the mountain, and he has done a great job of enduring all the prohibitions. There were quite a few of them who added a lot of prohibitions because of their enthusiasm, but most of the time, they either gave up or died. She says that it is nice to see a practitioner like him who appears occasionally, so she really wants to give him something good, so she asks him what he wants. Without a second thought, he asks her if she can make him a talented martial artist, but unfortunately, she can't grant that wish. He thinks more about what he wants. He can't achieve his goal with something that isn't good enough, and he doesn't have much time. He knows he needs to become stronger, but he doesn't know what he needs to do to achieve that. So he asks Mercy to give him what he needs. From this, Mercy assumes that what he needs is time, so he tells him to go to Dremor and to show the crest on his chest to Denir. Denir is the higher deity of time, and he will give him a trial. She tells him in advance that her trials, compared to Denir's, are considered humane. That was her reward for him for overcoming Flam. Now she gives him her reward for his 3-year stay. Her reward for him is a recommendation for him to become a member of Arabrisa. A man appears and introduces himself as the broker of Arabrisa, Neville. Neville takes a quick look at Sungmin and tells him that he is not qualified to become a member of their guild, but Mercy tells him to take a closer look. Neville immediately apologizes and sees that Sungmin is actually qualified. Sungmin asks for more details about Arabrisa, and Neville explains that it is an intermediary guild that mediates for what their customers desire. He asks Neville if they sell elixirs and martial art manuals, and he responds that they do. Sungmin checks to see what they are selling and is shocked to see that they sell very rare and expensive, high-quality items. Sungmin then asks Murshid if she is also a member of their guild, and she responds that she is. He is impressed that an intermediary god has a higher deity as their customer. Neville asks Sungmin if he would like to become a member of their guild. Sungmin takes some time to think and accept. After signing some papers, Sungmin becomes an official member of Erebrisa. Neville even does him a favor and ties him up. His clothes are brand new, and his hair is cut and well-maintained. Neville takes his leave and tells Sungmin to call him if he needs anything. Mershi then asks him where he is going to go now. He says that he will head for Behanger. She tells him to do as he pleases and reminds him of what she said during one of their meetings. While leaving, Sungmin thinks about what Mershi told him, that there is a reason for his regression. He wonders what she means by this. He thinks about the coincidences that he has benefited from in his life. Sungmin is being ambushed by wolf knights, but he is able to defeat them with ease. He continues to wonder about the benefits he was able to get in his new life, like meeting Hoyan and meeting Baek and receiving help from her. He wonders if those are coincidences or not. He stops thinking about it to avoid unnecessary headaches. After 3 years of training in the mountains, he has become a peak-level martial artist. His body is 18 years old, but to become a peak-level martial artist at his age, people would think he is a genius. He was only able to reach his peak level as a result of receiving the message and overcoming hardships. He needs to get stronger, so his destination is Behanger, and he must become a mercenary. Magic armor, Devanark, was found in the dungeon of the Black Magician near Benger. A rank C mercenary happened to obtain it by chance. Devanark's ability was amazing. Rank C mercenaries who are around 2nd to 3rd rate could become peak-level martial masters in an instant. If a peak martial master gets the magic armor, then they might be able to become a supreme peak martial. While he could have done more on Mershi's mountain, he can't miss this opportunity. Half a year from then, the Black Magician's dungeon will be cleared. Behanger needs to establish himself as a mercenary and take part in the raid. At the Behanger Mercenary Guild, Sungmin tells the bartender that he wants to become a mercenary. The bartender tells him to go upstairs to become a mercenary because the receptionist is there. A man eating at a nearby table laughs at how Sungmin wants to become a mercenary and tells him to just go and wash the dishes. But Sungmin grabs the man's fork to show the bartender that he is able to perform sword chi. The bartender recognizes that Sungmin is a martial master and asks him to take a seat. Many people in the guild are impressed by the presence of Sungmin, a martial master. The bartender introduces himself as Baron, a magician. He is the guild leader of the Behanger branch's mercenary guild. He usually works as a bartender in the first-floor lobby. Baron tells Sungmin that they normally give S-rank mercenary positions to peak martial masters, but they need to know if Sungmin is really experienced. He sets him up with a suitable request to verify his skills. He assigns another S-rank mercenary to go along with him, so the request won't be too difficult. Baron makes a deal that if Sungmin is able to fulfill the request, he will give him an S-rank mercenary qualification. Sungmin accepts this deal. The next day comes, and Sungmin is traveling with an S-rank mercenary. While having a conversation, the mercenary calls Sungmin boring for not speaking much. He asks him how he is going to become popular with girls if he acts so boring. He takes a longer look at him and sees that Sungmin is very handsome, and he takes back what he says. The man he is traveling with is Lude, an S-rank mercenary from the guild. He had no contact with him in his previous life, but he knows his name. He is the teammate assigned to the request by the guild. Sungmin suspects that he is probably monitoring what he does to accomplish the request. Lude then asks him if he's ever fought an ogre before, and he responds no. Ogres are one of the most powerful monsters in area. Ogres have some magic resistance and skin as solid as steel. The content of the request is to subdue an ogre. One was found in a forest near the village, so the villagers commissioned the guild to subdue it. Lude tells Sungmin that 2 S-rank warriors are more than enough when dealing with ogres, so he shouldn't worry too much. Lude then points out that it is strange how the forest is a bit small for an ogre to live in. Sungmin asks him what he means by this, and he explains that an ogre is at least 3 meters tall, and the larger ones could even be 5 meters tall. He says that it would be hard for an ogre to fill his stomach in a forest like the one they are in. Sungmin tells him to stop because he's found a dead deer that's been massacred. From observing it, it is obvious that only an ogre is capable of dealing with something like that. Sungmin then points out that there is no trace of the ogre eating it. A sound rumbles in the distance, and both of them go towards the sound to check what's causing the commotion. They see a chimpanzee ogre terrorizing the forest. Lude is in complete shock to see it, since it is completely different from what he has heard from the reports. He tells Sungmin that it's best if they run away since they can't handle something like this. A chimera is a magical creature created with the aim of becoming the ultimate species. The limitations of species that living things inevitably have can be surpassed by artificially combining with other species. Even a chimera that is made based on a F-rank goblin will have its subjugation level start at B rank due to the fact that its risk cannot even be measured. The chimera ogre sees him and starts attacking. Lude runs away, but Sungmin stays in place. The ogre's fist is mere inches away from his face, but Sungmin is able to avoid it in time and position himself to target the ogre. Even Sungmin himself is surprised by the speed at which he is going. He then remembers that the prohibition on weight is now gone. He runs up the ogre's arm and strikes with his spear, but unfortunately, the ogre's skin is too thick, and Sungmin's attack barely made a scratch. Lude, watching from a distance, sees Sungmin struggling to take down the chimera ogre. He attempts to help, but Sungmin telepathically tells him that he doesn't have to help him. Lude then starts yelling at him, reminding him that he hasn't even faced an ogre before. Sungmin persists in dealing with the ogre despite Lude's warnings. He uses the Supreme Nine Heavens Spear, second stance. The attack was able to push back the ogre, but it still didn't leave even a scratch. Even if Lude were to join in and help, both of them couldn't even lay a scratch on the ogre. Sungmin then targets the most sensitive part of the ogre, its eye. Lude, witnessing this, is impressed by Sungmin's skill despite his young age. He was able to pierce through the ogre's eye, but it regenerated almost instantly right after. Lude says that it is a chimera made with trolls because it has the regeneration abilities of a troll. A flesh wound would have no chance of defeating this thing, from the looks of it. Sungmin tries to think of a strategy to defeat the ogre, remembering his promises and refusing to die. Sungmin remembers his training with Hoyen and how she made him repeat the 3 basic spear techniques every day until he fully mastered them. Using those techniques, Sungmin was able to parry and dodge the ogre's attacks. He swivels inward, coiling around the ogre's attack. Aiming at the ogre's knee, he pierces through. Sungmin then begins to wonder how long it would take for the ogre to regenerate its knee, but he then realizes that it doesn't matter. He then stabs the ogre in the other knee and breaks his spear. The ogre won't be able to regenerate with a spear plunged through it. He then stabs the ogre in the shoulder so it won't be able to move its arm. While dodging the ogre's attacks, Sungmin wonders if the ogre has slowed down or if he has gotten faster. Sungmin hears the sound of a cicada in the distance. He gets reminded of his training in the mountains, back when he was still a larva. He begins wondering again about what he wants to become, but he still doesn't know, and he can't be satisfied with just being a cicada. He still doesn't know what lies at the end of his current path. He is only proceeding while preparing for what's to come until he reaches the end of that path. Sungmin finally defeats the ogre, and Lude asks him who he is. Sungmin also wonders what he is, but one thing is for sure. He is not a larva. Lude is confused by this response and just thinks he is spewing nonsense, but he says that Sungmin is definitely interesting. Lude and Sungmin come back to the guild, bringing the dead remains of the chimera ogre. Baron informs Sungmin that there is no precedent for them, giving him an SS rank from the start, despite him defeating an SS rank enemy. Sungmin says that S rank is fine and accepts what was reasonable enough. He got the subjugation reward of 1,000,000 ears and a plus S rank mercenary plaque. Chimera Ogre's corpse was handed over to the mercenary Gulid for investigation, so he also got an additional 20 million ears for that. In total, Sungmin was able to earn around 47 million ears. He compares his current earnings to the ones from his past life. In his past life, even when he risked his life to complete requests, he only received 1 million ears at most. He wonders what he is going to do with his newly earned money. Meanwhile, at the guild, Baron asks Lude about Sungmin's performance during the mission. Lude tells him that he is pretty skilled, but he tells him that it's best if he sees his skills himself. Baron taps into Lude's memories and witnesses Sungmin's skills himself. After observing, he concludes that Sungmin is definitely above S rank, and Lude even asks to make Sungmin SS rank. Baron says that he will suggest it. Baron then wonders if Sungmin became a peak martial master after being a no class for only 4 years. He then thought of someone who would take an interest in someone like Sungmin or Xian. Sungmin calls for Neville. He appears and asks Sungmin what he is calling him for. Sungmin didn't really have an obsession with weapons. To him, it didn't matter what it was, as long as it could be used to swing and stab. But during the fight against the Chimera ogre, he wondered if it would have been easier for him to pierce through the ogre if he had a better weapon. He would like to pass on any situation where weapons could become his biggest regret in an urgent situation. That is why he now needs a new weapon. Neville then asks Sungmin if he would prefer to buy or make one and how much of a budget he has in mind. Sungmin tells him that the budget is 47 million ears, and he would like to make it. Neville then tells him that 47 million ears is not a big budget. Sungmin is shocked that even that amount of money isn't enough to be considered a lot. Neville informs him that all the blacksmiths that Arabrisa brokers for are first-class blacksmiths, and as a result, they are very expensive. He then suggests that if Sungmin puts his soul as a guarantee, he can loan a large sum of money, but Sungmin declines the offer. He asks Neville if there is no way to get a weapon made with the budget he has. Neville says that there is someone who can help him and asks if he would like to meet that person right then. Sungmin says yes, and Neville opens a portal. He then leaves to give Sungmin and the blacksmith some space to talk. On the other side of the portal is the black elf blacksmith, who introduces herself as Selgerus. She invites him inside and tells him not to just space out. Sungmin didn't expect the blacksmith to look the way she does. He introduces himself to her and tells her that he would like to order a spear. He tells her that he would like it to look like the one that he has and shows her his spear as an example. Just from observing it, she concludes that he has a Central Plain-style spear. She asks him what kind of spear he uses. He then asks her why she wants to see his techniques, since it is taboo for martial artists to show their techniques to others. She tells him that she needs to see it to know what technique he uses to make his spear. She explains that depending on one's martial arts, the details can vary greatly, so it is necessary for her to see his technique. Sungmin is still unsure about her request, but she emphasizes that she is 400 years old and loves hammering, which is why she has been a blacksmith for 350 years. Although she has a different starting point compared to a dwarf, she has a natural talent for blacksmithing. She is confident in terms of her abilities and is not second to the dwarves. Hearing this, Sungmin remembers when he lashed out at Hoyan about having different starting points and sympathizes with Selgerus. She stops bickering and tells him that if he doesn't like the idea, he can go and ask the dwarves to make his weapon, but Sungmin finally agrees to show her his technique. Selgerus is shocked at the sudden change. Sungmin says that he changed his mind because she said that her 350 years of effort were real. She then starts laughing at him and tells him that he believes others too easily. She walks away, blushing and grinning at his words. She tries to get rid of the look on her face. She turns back to Sungmin and tells him that because she is the calculative type, she will make him something more than what he will pay for. She even thinks that he will become one of her regulars. Selgerus told Sungmin that it would take a few months for his weapon to be completed, so she told him to relax and wait. Sungmin is meditating and thinking about his battle with the Chimera ogre. He learned a lot of things, but he needs to completely digest those learnings and make them his own. He remembers Hoyan complimenting his situational awareness, saying that it was a talent. It had evolved into a skill for him after training in the mountains while having his senses blocked. He also felt it in the battle against the ogre, the sense that allowed his body to move on its own. While the force is powerful, he can't just rely on it. His training in the mountains has improved his sense of touch and sixth sense, but not his other sense. He is trying to resolve the imbalance of his senses in one day. At the Mercenary Guild, Sungmin approaches Baron. Baron asks if he is going to do his next request already. Sungmin just wanted to ask about what happened to the Chimera ogre's body. Baron tells him that it is hard for him to investigate it on his own, so he is looking into it with the Mage Guild. This bothers Sungmin because no Chimera ogre was found in his past life. Either no one has carried out the request, or the mercenary who was commissioned must have been beaten by the ogre. Judging from the circumstances, it should be the owner of the dungeon, who will be found 6 months later, who made the Chimera. He wonders if maybe in his past life, the owner had retrieved the Chimera. But now that Sungmin has killed the Chimera, the future may change. Sungmin tells Baron that he would like to see the body of the Chimera as well. At the Behenger Mage Guild, Sungmin is greeted by a mage handling the Chimera's body. He introduces himself as Kim Jong-hyun, a black mage. He tells Sungmin that he is investigating the Chimera right now. Sungmin introduces himself, and Kim asks him if he is Korean. Kim then says that even if he is from Korea, the probability that they are from the same dimension is low. He then asks Sungmin if there is a gate crisis in his world. Sungmin is taken aback by this and asks what a gate crisis is. Kim explains that it is a gate that connects to a dimension and has monsters coming out of it. He tells him to just forget about him asking. Kim tells him that he is happy to see him because it is the first time he's seen another Korean, but he then tells him that isn't the only reason why he's happy to see him. Sungmin asks him what he means by that, but Kim just says that it is nothing. He then asks Sungmin what brought him to the Mage Guild. He tells him that he wants to see the Chimera's body. Because of the changing flow of the future, Sungmin needs to get more information to get the Devanark armor quickly. Kim tells him about what he's found out about the Chimera. He tells him that there is a lot of very high-level magic cast upon the Chimera, so the black mage who made it is probably one of the greats. He also points out that the Chimera's mouth was sewn up, so it was made to be ferocious with hunger to test the Chimera's performance. This would explain the deer that they found in the woods. Sungmin then asks Kim again what he means by what he said earlier about being happy to see him. Kim tells him it is because his causality is twisted. Sungmin asks him how he found out, and Kim is even more impressed that Sungmin is aware of the concept. Kim tells him that if he were Sungmin, he would have been in despair and gone mad. Kim then asks what the reason is for Sungmin's causality being twisted, but Sungmin doesn't want him to know, calling him untrustworthy. Kim says that he will tell him something he might not know and that he will make a man's oath with him, never speaking of what he will hear. Sungmin is a bit unsure of what is happening, but since Kim is using a man's oath, it might be a good opportunity. Sungmin then tells Kim that he is a regressor, meaning he came back from the past after dying. Kim then tells Sungmin something that he might not know. He tells him that he is peculiar. Kim tries to tell him, but he can't bring himself to say it. The noise is ringing and echoing in Sungmin's ears. Kim can't tell Sungmin because he might die trying. Blood is spilling out of his eyes and mouth. Kim just tells him that it seems that Sungmin's life doesn't belong to him anymore. Sungmin walks out of the Mage Guild, confused by what he just went through. He then remembers what happened in Mershi's space. Sungmin then gets greeted by a familiar face, Scarlet. Sungmin doesn't seem to recognize her and asks her who she is. Sungmin is still in disbelief that she is the Scarlet that he met in the mountains and tells her not to lie. Angry at this response, Scarlet punches him in the face. Sungmin is finally convinced that the woman who just punched her is indeed Scarlet and greets her. She asks him what brings him to the Mage Guild. He says that he just has some business there. Looking at the door behind him, Scarlet asks if he was looking for the crazy bastard Kim Jong-hyun. He asks her if she knows who Kim Jong-hyun is, and she responds, saying that of course she knows who he is, and that all the black mages are creepy, but Kim is extremely creepy. She advises him not to get involved with Kim as much as possible. She heads off first because she is busy, but she invites Sungmin to visit if he is bored. Her lab is on the 3rd floor, and she'll serve him tea if he visits her. Sungmin thinks about when Mershi was talking to herself and how Kim couldn't finish his sentence. He noticed how these people seemed to favor him easily and even said that it felt weird. He suspects that something suspicious is causing all of this and wonders what it could be. Various things complicated things for him, and he was quite distracted by them, but he decided to concentrate on the things that are happening in front of him now. Sungmin and Lude cross paths again and end up going to the subjugation of the trolls together. He realized in his second life that people cannot live alone. He stopped pushing people who approached him away. Lude was a good friend to have around. He felt comforted when he traveled with him. 3 months have passed since they traveled together. They received 50 million ER after accomplishing another request. Lude suggests that they go get a dink to celebrate. Baron appears and tells Sungmin that there is someone who wants to see him. The Flare Mercenary Court Captain, Xian. Hearing the name shocks both Sungmin and Lude. Xian is the captain of the Flare Mercenary Corps, a large mercenary corps with more than 100 mercenaries, and one of the 3 SS-rank mercenaries in Behenger. He is a peak-level martial master who has mastered the 100-step Mystic Fist of Shaolin. He is the man Sungmin admired in his previous life because Zeon was also a no-class. Sungmin finally got to meet Zeon. Zeon has a conversation with Sungmin, sympathizing with him for also being a no-class. He compliments him for becoming a proficient martial master at his age despite being a no-class. Zeon then goes straight to the point with his intentions of meeting Sungmin and asks him to join the Flare Mercenary Corps. He tells Sungmin that he did a great job defeating the Chimera Ogre and that he will become an SS rank mercenary soon. If he accepts Zeon's offer, he will give him the post of vice captain. He is aware that the offer is sudden, so he tells him he can decide after he sees what's inside the box. Inside the box, Zeon is offering a lesser revitalization pill, an elixir of the Shaolin Temple, which will grant someone a great deal of internal energy. Zeon only has one condition. He must obey Zeon's orders. He gives Sungmin a contract and threatens him, saying that if he breaks it, he will be held responsible in various ways. With these terms and conditions, Sungmin refused Zeon's offer. Lud is shocked to hear the news of this. Sungmin says that there is no way he would sign a slave contract. Lud then says that everyone who is A rank or above and belongs to Zeon's mercenary corps is under his control, and if Sungmin doesn't follow him, he will definitely make things harder for him. In the past, Zeon was S rank and Lud was A rank, and he refused Zeon's offer to scout him. After he declined the offer, everyone stopped commissioning him because the commissions in the city are under the Flare Mercenary Corps' control. Sungmin didn't expect Zeon to be this kind of person. He doesn't know how to feel after seeing the ugly side of the person he liked. While drinking with Lud, Sungmin overhears a conversation saying that the Dark Mage's dungeon has been found, the dungeon of the Black Mage who made the Chimera Ogre. Apparently, they are going to form a subjugation force for it, with the Flare Mercenary Corps at the helm. Sungmin meets up with Seljuris. She apologizes to him, saying that the weapon took longer than she had expected. Sungmin tells her that it's okay since he didn't need it urgently. She hands him his new spear. The main metal used was mithril, while the metal for the exterior was black iron. The materials are good conductors of mana and chi, so it should be much easier for him to use sword chi. Neville tells Sungmin that Seljuris is really fond of him. Sungmin then asks him what he means by that, and Neville says that the materials that went into the spear are extremely exorbitant, and although he did give her additional funds to make the weapon better, most of the funds were used for the materials. She practically made him his weapon without charging him anything for labor. Neville tells him that he has a strange charm that makes people feel like helping him. Neville takes his leave after pestering Sungmin for so long. After hearing this, Sungmin is shocked because Neville has practically confirmed something he has been suspicious of. He wonders if there is something within him that is causing all of this, something that makes people like him better. He gets worried because if all of his relationships were caused by something suspicious, could everything that happened to him be considered fake? Lud meets up with Sungmin and he asks him where he went off. Sungmin still has a gloomy look on his face from his encounter with Neville. Lud asks Sungmin if he is worried about the dungeon raid. In the end, Sungmin's worries were confirmed when the future changed. Because he had killed the Chimera Ogre, the guild started to look for the Black Magician, and the dungeon was discovered 3 months earlier than in his previous life. The Flare Mercenary Corps, which couldn't participate in the expedition because they were out on another commission in their previous lives, is now able to participate in it since it has been brought forward by 3 months. There is a condescending energy coming from Zeon. He tells them that since the dungeon is a very dangerous place, they won't know when or how they might die. Lud takes this as a threat by saying he'd kill them in the midst of the chaos of the expedition. Because of the situation, Sungmin was considering accepting Zeon's offer to join the expedition. He chose to join in the end because of his abilities or lack thereof. It has been 3 months since he came down from Mershi's mountain, but he hasn't made any progress since then. In order to break the status quo, he needs the magic armor, Devinark. The raid had a total of 27 people, 1 SS rank, 4 S rank, and 12 A rank will be joining from the Flare Mercenary Corps. Since even the mercenary guild leader, Baron, would be joining, he wants to believe that he won't do anything rash, but while there wasn't a reason for Lud to join the raid, he probably joined because he was worried for him. Baron then announces that the Behendra Mercenary Guild will now enter the Black Magician's dungeon. He instructs everyone to stay on their toes so they will be able to take care of everything that is in their way inside the dungeon. They all enter the dungeon quietly. The vanguard was a rank mercenary Zhengshul. He is a martial master of external arts that allows him to make his body hard like a boulder, but despite having trained for a long time, his body got ripped apart like tofu, halting his comrades who walked behind him. In the dungeon, many chimeras are creeping and crawling all around the walls. The mercenaries begin to attack and take out the chimeras. Sungmin is impressed by Xian's strength. He guesses that if he gets into a confrontation with him, he won't be able to stand a chance. Sungmin also observed that there were chimeras in the cave, unlike in his past life. This makes him suspect that the dungeon master is in the dungeon with them. After fighting the chimeras, some of the mercenaries have died. Xian wonders if they can continue on their quest when they've taken too much damage. Baron points out that Xian's squad hasn't had many losses. Lu then tells Sungmin that Xian not only protected his own mercenary squad, but also complimented how he was able to do so during all the chaos. Within 1 hour of entering the dungeon, the raiding team had lost 11 A-rank mercenaries. Among the survivors, there was only one A-rank hunter remaining that didn't belong to the Flare Mercenary Corps, Tang Maisuk. Lude starts flirting with Tang, but he ends up frightening her. After his failed courtship, Lude tells Sungmin that the theory of misattribution of arousal is pure crap. Tang then informs Baron that the raiding team took a lot of damage, but Baron tells her that because of that, they cannot stop there. They won't be able to face their comrades who died without doing so. He tells her that there shouldn't be a problem with them continuing the raid because their main forces are still alive. He tells her that she can go back if she doesn't feel confident about doing the raid, but he can't protect her on the way back. Seeing the piles of bodies of her dead comrades behind her, she decides to continue tagging along with the raid. The group noticed how the dungeon suddenly became quiet. They wonder if the chimeras from earlier were there to buy time for the dungeon master. Baron then tells everyone not to let their guards down just because of some unconfirmed information. They then noticed a door. Upon further inspection, Baron confirms that it is not a trap but just a door. They go in, but there is nothing inside other than a regular library. Baron confirms that there are no traps inside either. He tells everyone to spread out and search the room. Sungmin remembers the guy who got the armor in his past life mentioning stumbling into a library during the raid. Sungmin then wonders which book he touched when he was in there. Sungmin inspects some of the books on the shelves until one opens a secret passageway. Xian asks Sungmin how he was able to find the passageway, and he tells him that he just found it by coincidence. Xian then compliments him and tells him that he is the one that he wants. Suddenly, Xian starts attacking Sungmin. He is even impressed that Sungmin was able to dodge his attacks. He tells him that since he can't have him on his side, he has to get rid of him. He is worried that, with his talent, he might even surpass him someday. Lude then appears to help. He is immediately taken down by Xian. Sungmin realizes that their chances are definitely low, so he takes Lude and continues to go down the passageway. If he gets the magic armor of Devanart, it will greatly improve his abilities. With that, he could have a chance of winning against Xian. At the bottom of the passageway, Sungmin finds the armor. He heads up to get the armor, but Xian catches up behind them, piercing through Lude's chest. Sungmin sees Lude's chest get punctured, then his body get thrown. He is seeing his friend die right before his eyes. This gets Sungmin into a great rage. He attempts to land an attack on Xian, but he is easily blocked. Xian tells him that Lude is just trash and would have eventually betrayed him. He smashes him into the wall and takes his spear. The blood that Sungmin spat out stained the armor and ended up fusing with him. Xian backs off, shocked and confused by what is happening. The armor finishes fusing with Sungmin, and he is emitting a heavy black energy. Xian is unsure what exactly the armor is doing, but he can tell that it is dangerous. The energy suddenly disappears, and Xian continues attacking. After wearing the armor, Sungmin doesn't feel any change in his internal energy or physical abilities at all. Xian is fed up with everything and tries to finish off Sungmin, but before he can, a mysterious dark entity appears. Xian tries to attack it, but his fist is blocked by a magical barrier. The entity notices and comments that the armor hasn't established a contract and that Sungmin's soul's karma is off course. The sixth sense that Sungmin had been honing so far was screaming at him. The rest of the mercenaries heard the commotion from under the passageway and followed it. They see the mysterious entity and ask it if it is the dungeon's master, the Black Magician. The entity is revealed to be a lich. Frightened by this, Baron calls for everyone to flee, but he is immediately killed by it. The exit has also been blocked. He chains all of them and says that the day when their prayers are fulfilled isn't very far. The battle ended quickly. The Black Mage slaughtered everyone, including dozens of SS rank mercenaries. Baron, who was in front of a great magician, was cut in half in an instant, his body rolling on the dungeon floor, and even Xian was easily suppressed. Sungmin wonders how he ended up where he is. He starts thinking about how he thought things would be different for him in his new life. He thought that he had become something else, but in his eyes, he is still a larva. Sungmin is being imprisoned by the Lich Prescan and awakens in his workshop. He tells him that he wants to become a woman. He then goes off to compliment how women are amazing since they are able to achieve a feat that numerous alchemists haven't been able to achieve their whole lives, birth. This is why Prescan tried all sorts of ways to become a woman, but he failed in the end. He eventually found an answer. Even if he doesn't give birth to life himself, there is a way to still make it. He says that the fellow that he had met in the past who had messed up karma was a monster that couldn't do anything about it. He says that if he uses someone like Sungmin as an offering, he will get closer to fulfilling his dream. He touches Sungmin's face with his creepy, bony skeleton hands. Sungmin is being engulfed by unsettling feelings and noises. They are teleported into space with a giant eyeball floating with them. Prescan is trying to offer Sungmin to the eye, but there seems to be something troubling the transaction. After the failed transaction, Prescan and Sungmin go back to the workshop. Angered by having his offer rejected, he asks Sungmin who he is and why the Demon King of Fear rejected him. He is confused because a soul with messed up karma possesses great value as an offering, so why would he be rejected? Prescan then takes a look at his memories and sees everything. After seeing his memories, the Lich was gone. Sungmin was relieved to find himself alive after that whole ordeal, but in the very next moment, he hears a loud chirping. The sounds of cicadas that had disappeared after he had defeated the Chimera Ogre returned, but he was soon able to move. It was because of his willpower as a third-rate mercenary in his previous life, where he struggled to survive no matter what, and the promise he made with his friends. He promises to never die. Suddenly, someone is telepathically communicating with him. The voice introduces himself as Lloyd, the Golden Mage Tower Master. Sungmin remembers this name from his past life. He went missing at some point. Lloyd tells him that he needs help. He is severely injured, so he can't move, and he is asking for help to get out of the dungeon. He then asks what happened to the Lich, and Sungmin tells him that he ran away. Lloyd tells Sungmin that it is safe where he is and that there are no enemies, but Sungmin asks him how he can trust that he is telling the truth. He says that he swears by his mana. He promises to reward him handsomely if he helps him. Sungmin arrives and finds Lloyd. He notices traces of a huge fight that took place in the room. He then finds Xian's dead body. He asks Lloyd what happened, but Lloyd tells him that it's not what's important and that he should help him quickly. Sungmin asks him what he needs help with. To get out of the dungeon, Lloyd needs to get the heart destroyed. Sungmin sees the heart floating in the middle of the room and asks what exactly it is. Lloyd says that he doesn't know either, but it was made by Prescan. Sungmin attempts to destroy it, but in doing so, the heart transfers within him, becoming his. Sungmin has obtained the Black Heart. Hours before Sungmin obtained the Black Heart, Prescan the Lich stumbled as he was exiting the dungeon. Prescan used a type of magic that destroys a person's mind and extracts their memory from Sungmin, but the magic got reflected somehow. Prescan wonders how this happened. His other magic worked just fine, but only the memory-reading magic got reflected, and even the Demon King of Fear refused him as an offering. He received too much damage and used up too much mana. He uses the fallen mercenaries to recharge his mana. Xian is also there, playing dead. Prescan sucks the life out of the mercenaries to regain mana and energy. He even points out that Xian was just lying down, playing dead. Xian asks him if his mana will also be sucked out, but Prescan says that he is going to use him in a way that has more value. Lloyd appears behind him and asks him what he is going to do. Lloyd says that after 10 years, he has finally found him. After seeing Prescan in a weakened state, he plans on destroying his body and then slowly finding his life force vessel. Xian offers his help to destroy the Lich, but Lloyd tells him he should just stand aside because he is not strong enough to be of help. Seeing himself at a disadvantage, Preskin obtains one of the black hearts. This has helped him gain a massive flow of mana. Preskin then summons a woman. It is still incomplete, and the heart and body are not ready yet, but he still has one more heart to work on, so it should be fine for him to use the incomplete product to overcome his current crisis. Lloyd attempts to attack Preskin and the woman he created, but his magic is dispelled easily. The woman tells Preskin that she is hungry, so she takes Xian's heart and eats it. This is the story that Lloyd told Sungmin when he was still asleep. Lloyd then used his magic to attack, and Preskin and the Won ran away after. He then thanks Sungmin for saving his life inside the dungeon and for destroying the heart. Sungmin wonders what the thing is in his body. Lloyd thanks Sungmin and promises to reward him. He will grant him one thing he desires, as long as it is within his power. Since he didn't want anything at the moment, he just kept the reward. Preskin was the Black Magic Tower Master, but a kill order was issued for him because he had gone against the prohibitions. The person who had taken on the mission was the Golden Magic Tower Master, Lloyd. At the end of the 10-year pursuit, he happened to chance upon the raid. In his previous life, he probably died in the dungeon. Since the raid was originally going to take place a few months down the road, that is how he went missing. Someone who was originally supposed to die is now alive because of Sungmin's regression, and someone who should have been alive is now dead. Lude. The hero in his world was Xian, and for them, there were many other monsters that could have been killed just as easily. What he had thought to be the sky was just the lid of a well. There has always been somewhere with a much larger sky. He wonders what level Hoyan will have already reached by then. He admits that he is just a larva. He refuses to despair over what he cannot get. He will crawl a step further in his own larval way. Someone then calls for Sungmin. He turns around to see that it is Kim Jong-un. He comments about Sungmin's new armor, saying that it is quite a unique artifact. He asks if he could take a closer look at it. He also tells Kim that he has something else to ask him as well. Kim tells him that the armor is a type of forced contract tool, and it links to the Transcendent, the Demon King. The armor is an evil armor that skips the official making of a contact and forces its user into a Slade contract. He expands more on what a Slade contract is. He says that if a person has the potential to become a peak martial artist and wears the demonic armor, their potential would be awakened and they would become a peak martial master. But after they die, their soul will belong to the Demon King, and all will happen regardless of what the user wants. Sungmin then tells him that nothing happened to him after he put on the demonic armor. Kim says that there are two possibilities for this. Either he no longer has any potential that can be awakened, or he has already made a contract with an Aster that is even stronger than the demonic armor's master. He says that there is a higher chance that the latter happened and asks Sungmin if there is anyone he has in mind. Sungmin then remembers how the Demon King of Fear rejected him as an offering. Kim then tells him that even if the contract isn't in place, he can still use the armor as it is since it has several beneficial types of magic cast on it. Kim changes the armor so Sungmin can wear it as a normal bracelet. If he infuses mana or internal energy into it while fighting, it will become armor again. Sungmin then tells Kim that Preskin tried to offer him to the Demon King of Fear. Kim explains that the Demon King of Fear is a transcendent being that is of a very high level. The Demon King of Fear is able to instill fear in anyone that is of a lower level than he is just by looking at them, and Kim is impressed that Sungmin is able to maintain his sanity even after facing it, and that even someone as strong as him can accept him as an offering. Kim then asks Sungmin if he understands what this means. Sungmin asks if it is because his soul is of a higher level than the Demon King of Fear, but Kim says he can't answer that because he will bleed again. Sungmin then asks about the black heart that he absorbed into his body. Preskin had researched the ultimate life form. If the heart is the product of his wish, it may give Sungmin a result that is on a totally different level as compared to the demonic armor. Kim apologizes that he can't give him a better answer, but he tells him that a higher deity might be able to give him a better answer. Sungmin then remembers what Mershi told him, to go to Dremor and meet with the higher deity of time, Denir. Sungmin thanks Kim for answering his questions, and Kim tells him that it wasn't anything hard and that he is open for consultation anytime because he took a good liking to Sungmin. After finishing the confrontation, Sungmin ended up with more questions. He now plans to go to Dremor. Suddenly, he gets kicked in the face by Scarlet. She scolds him for getting involved with Kim, even though she had warned him not to. He tells her that he just had some questions. Scarlett then tells him that he could have asked her instead. She continues to scold him. He then asks her how old she is, but before he could finish his question, Scarlett's face changed, looking horrific. She tells him that he shouldn't ask a woman that. From the response he got, he guesses that Scarlett is older than she looks. She then asks Sungmin if he is alright after surviving the raid alone. He says he is okay, but he has a down expression on his face. She then asks him what he is going to do now. He tells her that he plans on going to Drumore for some business. Scarlett then excitedly says that they should go together. Scarlett requested that she travel with him because she has business in Drumore too. Sungmin didn't dislike the idea of traveling with Scarlett. She is a genius who has magic that belongs to her alone. She set up the School of Laser and will soon become the Crimson Magic Tower Master. It is a great idea for him to become friends with someone like her. He then wonders why people are so friendly toward him. He suspects that all the people he's met aren't attracted to him, but rather to the thing that is behind him. He starts to think that all the connections he's made thus far are nothing but lies. He doesn't have any proof of this since it is only a suspicion, but the thought of it is sticking to him. But if it is true, Scarlett would be following him on his trip because of that specific reason. He fears that if something were to go wrong, she would end up with the same fate as Lude. Sungmin wouldn't be able to forgive himself if it did happen. That is the reason he didn't want Scarlett to travel with him. When he saved Lloyd and obtained the Black Heart, he searched Zeon's corpse. Someone like him who was suspicious of everyone would definitely keep precious items on him. What he had found surprised him. He had a lesser revitalization pill, a greater revitalization pill, and Sholin's ultimate martial arts secret manual. They were all priceless items. Regardless of what Sungmin is worried about, he needs to get stronger first. He swallows the lesser revitalization pill and circulates his energy. After doing so, he doesn't notice or sense any changes at all. Usually, when someone drinks an elixir at the level of a lesser revitalization pill, the internal energy of the elixir ought to be surging within the body. He wonders if the pill was a fake, but suddenly, something starts happening inside Sungmin. His internal energy increased exponentially. It is supposed to be hard to even absorb a portion of the internal energy gained, but Sungmin seems to have made all of its internal energy his. He wonders if this is because of the Black Heart. He then takes the greater revitalization pill. After doing so, he was able to perfectly absorb both the lesser revitalization pills and the great revitalization pill's internal energies. Sungmin is almost on par with a Supreme Peak Realm Martial Master in terms of internal energy. He is able to solve the lack of internal energy that he always had, and now he is going to use Shaolin's ultimate martial arts secret manual. The next day comes, and Sungmin tells Scarlett that he is going to Brighton instead of Drumore. He apologizes to her, and she asks him what made him change his destination so suddenly. He says that it is because he obtained a secret martial art manual from the Shaolin Temple and intends to return it to them. Scarlett then asks him if he is a pushover. She suggests that he learn the contents of the manual and then sell it. He says that he is already learning the contents, and there are already tons of people selling such martial manuals, so selling wouldn't do much. Scarlett then tells him that she can still travel with him since she also has business in Brighton. She says it's not really business and that she just wants to see the world. He asks her if he is returning to that time in the mountains when she couldn't change her clothes and she smelled very bad, but she angrily tells him that she will bathe. They confirm their plans to travel together a week from then. Sungmin tries to think positively of the situation, seeing that it is a good thing that he has someone to talk to on his trip, and it won't be easy for something dangerous to happen since there are two of them. Suddenly, the woman that Preskin summoned from the Black Heart appeared. She tells Sungmin that after she met him, she started to feel strange, so she asks him who he is. A while before the woman encountered Sungmin and Scarlett, Preskin was sulking because he didn't expect Lloyd to be as strong as he was. Preskin barely survived the encounter he had with him in the dungeon. If he hadn't awakened his daughter in time, he wouldn't have been able to survive Lloyd. He begins to lose a bit of control over his own creation since he awakened her in such a rush. Even so, she doesn't seem to be harming him, which means that the obedience seal is working. He tells her that she needs to go back to the dungeon so she can get his other heart. She follows his instructions, but she seems to be going in the wrong direction. Despite being instructed by her father, she is going in another direction because she is feeling something strange. Her heart is thumping really hard. She encounters Sungmin and Scarlet. Her arm transforms into a giant fist. Sungmin seems to be frozen in place, but Scarlet is able to protect him from the girl's attack. She tells him to get himself together. He wonders what business the girl has with attacking them. He thinks that she is there to get his heart back. Even Sungmin is unsure if he could take her since she was able to kill Zeon in an instant and Lloyd barely escaped her alive. He remembers that Scarlet is with him, so he is determined to protect her and defeat the girl. He puts on the armor and deflects the girl's attacks. He has trouble reading her attacks since they aren't conventional and her fists are way more powerful than the Chimera Ogre's. If he hadn't increased his internal energy with the elixir, his situation would have been even more troublesome. Fortunately, he was able to ask Seldurus to make his armor lighter so he could move faster. Scarlet is able to fend off the girl with her magic. She explains that normal magic resistance would be useless against it because she added incantations to make it her very own magic. She gets distracted by her own blabbering, but she is saved in time by Sungmin. He then wonders if the girl is using the 100-step Mystic Fist since she did eat Zeon's heart. This would mean that she could absorb the abilities of anything she ate. Sungmin can't parry or hold to deflect the girl's attacks. The girl asks him who he is. Scarlet does a good job fending off the girl. She taunts her, but she gets stuck by the magical arms summoned from the mud. She is unable to move, and Sungmin sees this as the perfect time for him to attack her. To dodge his attack, the girl cut off her own legs. She instantly regenerates the legs that she cut off. Even the parts that Scarlet burned have regenerated nicely. Scarlet says that even if the girl has exceptional regeneration abilities, there is a limit to them. She tells Sungmin that they have the upper hand if they fight her together. If they continue attacking her continuously, the girl's mana will eventually hit rock bottom. Then the girl unleashes a great wave of energy. Scarlet immediately takes back what she had just said. Sungmin is greatly injured by the girl's attacks. Scarlet tells him that he can't die. He thinks about how he had to change and how he had changed. When he changed the world around him. That is what he became on Mershi's mountain. But that wasn't sufficient because he dreamed of heights that he could never reach. The truth is that he didn't leave just because he got the demonic armor. It was also because he hit a wall and it seemed too high for him. In the end, he just wanted to choose the easier route. He made the excuse that he wanted to get the demonic armor and left the mountain. The price he had to pay for that decision was huge. He thinks of himself as useless and pathetic. Because of that, he needed to struggle, but he chose to run away instead. After being injured by the girl's attack, he loses some of his strength. He picks up his spear and feels the weight of it. The static noises of the cicadas are back in his ears. His determination to not die comes back, and he continues to push through. With sword chi, he pierces through the girl's fist with his spear. His power was enough to hold her back. The girl asks him one last time, "Who are you?" He responds to her, "I am Lee Sungmin." The girl tells him who she is too. She is Ain. She leaves after barely being able to withstand Sungmin's attack. Sungmin wakes up in bed. He asks Scarlet where they are. Scarlet tells him that he passed out for 3 days and that they are resting in a nearby village. She called a doctor and used a potion on his external injuries. He says that he is able to move without any problems after being treated. She scolds him again, telling him to stop acting tough since she knows that he broke a lot of bones. Scarlet is in disbelief that Sungmin was able to heal his fractures in the span of just 3 days. Sungmin suspects that this is an effect of the black heart that he absorbed. Scarlet suspects that Sungmin is keeping something secret from her. She asks him what the monster girl they fought was, since it seemed like he knew something about her. He explains everything to her about the black heart. After hearing what happened, she now understands why Sungmin kept going to Kim. She tells him that if she hadn't tagged along with him, he would have died already. He then asks her why she didn't run away since the girl was only after him. She tells him it was because she simply didn't want to do so. She tells him a story about her past. When she was a kid, a war broke out. She says that war is a brutal thing that burns away everything precious. The hometown she was born in and all the precious people who mattered to her were taken away. It was hard for her to get used to such a sense of loss, which is why she never tried to get close to anyone. She tells her that's why she couldn't just leave him alone. She tells her not to worry too much about it since they both made it out alive. She asks him if he travels alone because he is scared that people who travel with him might die. She gives him a word of advice. If he doesn't want to lose important people, he just needs to get stronger. Sungmin tells her that that is such an obvious thing. Both of them started to feel better after having the conversation. She leaves the room and tells him to rest since they will be departing for Brendan tomorrow. Sungmin thinks about the last moment during the fight against the Ain. What came out of his spear was strengthened energy. After having a talk with Scarlet, he realizes that he doesn't need to think about such useless things since he is going to get stronger. They arrive in Brendan. Scarlet asks him what they are going to do since they aren't going to see Shaolin right away. She suggests that they rest and get some food. They arrive at a restaurant, and Sungmin asks her what they should eat. Scarlet is still unsure since she has never eaten food from the Central Plains before, and she doesn't know how she should deal with those fly bastards. Sungmin asks her if she felt it too. The moment they entered the place, the people inside scanned them from top to bottom. She wonders why they are being monitored. Sungmin says it is probably because of him. When a martial artist reaches the supreme level, they achieve origin reversal. The profound internal energy they have can't be seen by others. While Sungmin achieved one of the requirements to become a supreme martial master with his strengthened energy, he didn't meet the other requirements, so he is still not a full-fledged supreme martial master, which means his internal energy is overflowing and has attracted a lot of attention from the flies. A man then appears and confronts them. Annoyed by him, Scarlet starts talking back to the man, calling him an idiot and asking him if he's eaten crap. The man continues with his flowery talk, but she tells him to just shut up. She tells him to stop talking and just focus on his own business. The man starts getting infuriated because of Scarlet's remarks. He threatens her, telling her that he will give her one chance to take back what she said. She tells him that she has no plans of doing so. The man then jumps from the second floor and goes in to attack her. Before Sungmin can even do anything to stop the man from attacking, someone else appears and stops him. He was able to stop him with just a single coin. He apologizes for interfering and introduces himself as Nemgon Hwon. He is a rising star from the Nemgon clan. The Nemgon clan is a clan that has numerous strong martial artists. He asks them if he could join them. Scarlet tells him that they don't mind as long as he pays their bill. He agrees and joins them at their table. Hwon's attention is focused on Sungmin, and Sungmin asks him why he is looking at him like that. He asks Sungmin how old he is. Upon hearing that he is only 18, he is impressed that he is almost a supreme martial master at such a young age. He asks him if he is the little heavenly demon, Wiji Hoyan. Hearing her name makes him spit out his drink. Hwon then asks him if he knows the little heavenly demon. Hwon explains that there are only 3 martial artists called the heavenly demons in area: the blood heavenly demon, Baek Wesian, the berserk heavenly demon, Byok Wonpei, and the little heavenly demon, Wiji Hoyan. He then finds out that Sungmin isn't the person he thinks he is. He then says that there is a rumor that Hoyan is actually a woman. He then asks Sungmin who exactly he is since he is a newbie who possesses incredible martial arts. He introduces himself as Lee Sungmin. Hwon doesn't seem to have heard the name before. Sungmin then asks him if he knows anything about Hoyan. He tells him that everything he just mentioned is all that he knows. He tells him that if he wants to know more about Hoyan, he just has to ask around since he is quite tyrannical. Hwon then asks him if he is willing to spar with him. He says that he doesn't mean any ill intent and that he simply feels competitive when he sees a strong martial artist. Sungmin agrees with his request, and Hwon is elated. Hwon suggests that they bet on something to make the sparring less boring. He says that they shouldn't bet on something too serious and suggests that the loser must become the winner's brother. They head to an area where they can spar. Sungmin tells Hwon that he doesn't know if he will be able to live up to his expectations. Hwon tells him that he is being overly humble. The energy around him completely changed into something more menacing. It is to be expected from the strongest of the next generation in the Nemgon clan. His power could even be that of a supreme martial master. Sungmin is bewildered by his strange footwork. He uses his shadowless soul flight to get close to the opponent. In doing so, he is able to destroy his illusionary footwork. Sungmin's spear is getting sucked in by Hwon's sword. He wonders if this is an energy absorption technique. Sungmin attempts to land an attack on him, but he keeps getting blocked. While the two are sparring with each other, Scarlet is spacing out and getting bored on the side. Hwon dashes in closer to Sungmin. Sungmin's spear is stuck and being absorbed. Hee-won's internal energy control is way better than his. He resorts to using his internal energy to push him away. He emits a barrage of energy targeting his foe, but he is able to dodge it. Hee-won closes in and wins the duel between them. Sungmin realizes that he still has a long way to go. Hee-won compliments him, saying that although he won, the difference between their skills isn't that large. He tells him that his spearmanship is definitely incredible. He tells him that he is still unfamiliar with internal energy control. Because of that, Sungmin is taking more damage, even in the smaller clashes. Now that Sungmin has become Hee-won's younger brother, he requests that he take him somewhere. He requests that they go to the Shaolin Temple. Sungmin tells him that he is actually on his way there. The two started to get along well. Meanwhile, an old man is meditating, and he senses something is coming. He senses the omnipotent chaos of a higher deity is coming. The reason that Hee-won is going to Shaolin is because every year he needs to visit Shaolin's abbot, Master Belyong, along with the upcoming generation of the other 3 reputable clans. Sungmin asks him why he has to do that every year. It is because of a long-time promise, which he will explain in more detail on their way there. There are 4 reputable clans: Nemgon, Jaegil, Moyeong, and Tang. The successors of the 4 clans are similar in terms of age and skills. Each clan's patriarch tried to make a group that could unite all the clans, but when they finally tried to create it, they argued about who the leader of the group should be. Since their skills were on a similar level, it was hard to decide who should lead. This is why they decided to leave it to the next generation. Tang he is the poison butterfly. Jaegil Taryong is the silver flying dragon. Moyeong Seojin is the snow flower. Nemgon Hee-won is the sword dragon. Hee-won apologizes for being late since he got caught up with something. The 4 descendants are all people that Sungmin has heard of in his previous life. Hee-won is being scolded by Tang. She asks him if the reason for his tardiness is Sungmin. They start bickering with each other. Hee-won goes on to introduce Sungmin as his brother, who is a martial master who has almost reached the level of Supreme Peak, despite not having reached 20 years old. Sungmin realizes that he is being introduced as Hee-won's brother because if he has a brother who is almost at his Supreme Peak at the age of 18, then he will be able to raise his status among the rising stars of each clan. They all begin to depart to visit the Master Belyong, so Hee-won tells him to rest somewhere nearby. One of the monks invites Sungmin and Scarlet to have some meals prepared for them. Scarlet is disappointed that there isn't any meat since they are being served in a temple. Sungmin thinks about how he is going to return the secret manual he took from Zeon and return to Drimor. A monk comes into their room to inform Sungmin that the abbot is asking to meet with him. Sungmin wonders why a person such as the abbot would want to meet with him. Upon meeting him, the abbot tells him that he is loved by the omnipotent chaos higher deities. Sungmin asks him what he means by the omnipotent chaos of higher deities. The abbot explains that it is an immortal existence that is beyond the understanding of humans. Sungmin asks him to elaborate further, but the abbot says that it is not possible. He then remembers what happened to Kim when he started bleeding. Sungmin then asks him where he can go to get the answer that he wants. The energy in the room changes, and an eerie voice speaks to Sungmin, telling him to go north. He is being told that 5 years from now, he will go to the place where the eternal snow never melts and meet someone very important. Sungmin asks who that was, but the abbot tells him not to question it, saying that it wasn't him but the spirit in his body. He doesn't know why the spirit suddenly spoke to him through the abbot's body, but he thinks that what the spirit said might answer his questions. The abbot then changes the topic to the manual that Sungmin is trying to return. The abbot then asks him if he came to him to gain something by giving them something he just normally picks up. He gets handed a great circulation elixir. Sungmin is shocked that he was given something so precious. The abbot then says that Sungmin is really how Hoyan described him. Shocked by the name he had just heard, he asks the abbot if Hoyan is around the area. The abbot doesn't give a clear answer, but Sungmin persists. He then tells him that if he wants the answer so desperately, he must fight the monk child behind him, Jae-hak. Sungmin lost against Jae-hak. He thinks of himself as pathetic to the extent that he couldn't even say anything to the face that he saw in his thoughts. In his spar with Hee-won, he lost but was still able to put up some fight. But with Jae-hak, it was like he was a child, and he was made a fool against him. He had never even heard of his name in his previous life, so he wonders, Who on earth is he? Jae-hak tells the abbot that Sungmin is lacking in many things. What he lacks most is experience, while the spear technique is advanced. So he is not able to use it to its full potential. He is also inexperienced at controlling his internal energy. The abbot tells Sungmin that his overall energy is unbalanced. The abbot then ties his walking stick to one of Sungmin's legs. The abbot goes on to explain that that is Sungmin's body's current state. His mind is an understanding of high-level martial arts that he has. The energy is compared to the sudden increase of internal energy, and the body is the state where his body doesn't even have the conception and governor vessels unclogged. Despite having a high level of understanding and energy, the energy is getting stuck within his body, unable to be used. Sungmin's internal energy increased because he ate elixirs. He explains that if both of his legs are the same length, then he'd be able to walk without any issues, but it would become hard to walk if one of his legs was excessively long. Sungmin asks the abbot what he needs to do, and he is told that he needs to first unclog his conception and governor vessels. If he does, his energy will flow smoothly, and his problem of controlling internal energy will be resolved. Sungmin then asks if this means that he has to undergo body reformation. The abbot instructs Jae-hak to help Sungmin with his martial arts for now, since he will experience energy deviation within 10 years if he is left to be. Apparently, Hoyeon asked the abbot to give him guidance if he were to come to him. Jae-hak asks Sungmin how he feels after sparring with him. Sungmin says that he feels like he became a little stronger. He tells Jae-hak that he became a peak martial master after years of hardship, was recently enlightened, and is now able to use enhanced energy. Yet he lost to both Jae-hak and Hee-won, so he still has a long way to go. Jae-hak tells him not to be so anxious about what he's thinking because, for his age, it is rare for people to reach his level. Jae-hak then says that even he was unable to defeat Hoyeon. He tells him that he fought her when she was in Shaolin. He then asks Jae-hak what Hoyeon was doing in Shaolin. She apparently just wanted to see Shaolin. It sounded arrogant coming from someone like her, but no one was able to rebuke her. When Jae-hak fought with him, he was utterly defeated. Sungmin then asks how strong Hoyeon has become. Jae-hak tells him that he can't guess since he is not at her level yet, but he says that she stepped beyond the level of a supreme peak martial master. Sungmin tries to hide the grin appearing on his face, and Jae-hak asks him how he is related to Hoyeon. He just tells him that they are friends and that she is his goal. After hearing this, Jae-hak now understands why Sungmin is getting anxious. They continue their sparring. Sungmin is only used to feeling despair. It is still not easy for him. Getting back up isn't easy. He had thought that he was kind of catching up, but she is still far away. In the time that he had been crawling at his best, Hoyeon had already flown much further away, which is why he intends to remain in Shaolin for a while. Sungmin informs Scarlet and Hee-won about his plans to stay, but they don't seem to recognize him because his face is so beaten up from sparring with Jae-hak. Hee-won is shocked after hearing that Sungmin had sparred with Jae-hak. He is jealous because his request to spar with Jae-hak was ignored by the abbot. Despite being so strong, he has never heard of him in his past life. Hee-won explains that the 4 great clans, including the Newbie clan, are reputable within area, but they are still a little less powerful than the 10 great sects. The top 3 rising stars of the Orthodox sect are the Beggar sect's Chui Gul, the Wudang sect's Chung Ming, and Shaolin's Jae-hak. Each sect's martial masters would focus their efforts on training them. They are the secret weapons that will never leave their sects. This would explain why Sungmin had never heard about him before. Scarlet bids farewell to Sungmin. He asks her where she is going, and she says that she is going to travel without any destination in mind. She then starts teasing him, telling him not to be sad because she's going to leave him. Sungmin promises that he will train really hard, so that won't happen. Scarlet gives him a bracelet that is connected to her soul. No matter where he is, if Scarlet wants to see him, the bracelet will send him a signal. She also gave one to Bae, but she never thought she'd give him one. She tells him to train hard and be the one to save her next time, and he promises to do exactly that. Hee-won was envious of the living moment that had happened between Scarlet and Sungmin. The next day comes, and Scarlet and Hee-won say their goodbyes to Sungmin. Before Scarlet could leave, Sungmin asked her why she treated him so nicely. She tells him that it is strange since she normally tries not to get close to people, yet she still gets drawn to him helplessly. But she tells him that after traveling together, She has learned that he is a nice guy. She calls him indifferent and boring, but she feels like cheering for him when she sees him working hard. She says she likes hitting him and that he is loyal, and she feels like he is the kid that won't betray her no matter what. She also says that he is good-looking. Sungmin laughs at the last statement she makes. She tells him to stop acting like a loser and live with his head held high. Scarlet and Hyun finally leave. While in Shaolin, Sungmin decided not to use the spear or the demonic armor. He didn't want to use the items that represented the old man who wanted to take the easy way out. He leaves behind his weak mindset and those items. He will also put away the great circulation elixir that Master Belyong gave him, since it will only increase the disharmony within his body. He remembers what the soul within Master Belyong told him, to go to the place where the eternal snow never melts to meet someone very important. The agreed-upon time to meet with Hoyan is 6 years later. The release of the dungeon where Baek and Hoyan will meet is 5 years later. The important person in the prophecy is Baek. Whatever the case, Sungmin only has 5 years left. Jae-hak notices and points out how Sungmin left behind his spear and demonic armor and asks him why he did so. Sungmin tells him that they are not suitable for him. Jae-hak tells him that martial arts is basically studying how to use his body, but the thing that controls his body is his heart. His heart will cover his body and become energy. Sungmin still hears the cicadas chirping. It is stuck in his ear, and it won't go away. Before he leaves Shaolin, he will do something about it. Jae-hak gives a backhanded compliment, telling Sungmin that his basic techniques are impressive. He also tells him that the spear technique he's learned feels clumsy, and he asks why. Sungmin tells him it is because he ran away and that no matter how hard he trained, he couldn't improve further. Jae-hak lectures him, telling him that if one can become an advanced martial master just by learning common techniques, then there's no need to learn advanced martial arts. Sungmin uses his supreme Nine Heavens spear technique and is able to land a hit on Jae-hak. Jae-hak tells him that the path of martial arts is endless and they ought to know where they lack, acknowledge it, and overcome it. He tells him that he is not a genius and that real geniuses have flown far away while he was crawling. He tells him that he may despair, but he mustn't let it devour him. Sungmin then asks Jae-hak if he is making big progress. He responds, saying that he thought he was, but after sparring with Hoyan, he realized that he wasn't, but he is going to work hard to reach her level. Sungmin then thinks about himself and what a bug in the ground like him hopes for. He wonders if he could hope to only crawl on the cold ground. The only thing he can do is wriggle, but he wishes to one day fly like Hoyan. To Sungmin, Hoyan and Baek weren't good masters because they could only teach him from the genius perspective. Jae-hak is more proficient at teaching, as he has been taught by countless monks since he was young. Both of them begin to use bladed weapons. While sparring, Jae-hak tells him that his senses are somewhat tangled. His sixth sense is abnormally developed, but his 5 other senses are in a rut. He tells him that he is still unfamiliar with internal energy circulation and that he needs to improve it. It was that day that he became keenly aware of how worthless he was, but he didn't run away. He trained the supreme Nine Heavens spear technique and didn't improve as usual. He trained in circulating internal energy, and it didn't go well. He trained his 5 senses and finally found the balance in his senses that was abnormal. He lacked understanding, and every time he felt that way, he trained even harder. The seasons changed, and he still wasn't able to gain the upper hand against Jae-hak even once. Jae-hak, who learned from all the monks, was Shaolin himself. Sungmin vows that he will see and experience Shaolin. Sungmin is standing by a cliff, watching the scenery. He begins to realize that the world is big and that he is small compared to it. He notices that a larva that is in the ground thinks that small space in the ground is the whole world, and he wishes to not become that. He wants to fly through the vast and large world and see it all. While he is thinking about his life, Master Belyong appears behind him. He tells Sungmin that he has changed and looks happier. He then asks him if what he said is really what he wants. Sungmin says that he wants to see the world and fly. Master Belyong says that it is a high ambition. He then asks him what he has learned in the past 6 months. He says that he learned to crawl. Master Belyong seems happy to hear this and tells him that it is time for him to learn how to walk. More time has passed, and it has now been more than 1.5 years since Sungmin came to Shaolin. He is now 20 years old. He asks Jae-hak if it was troublesome for him to train him. This is a bad habit of his, being unable to abandon his inferiority complex completely. He tells him that he doubts that he will be able to grow from sparring with him, so he asks him if it is all right for him to use his time training him. Jae-hak then tells him that he doesn't know why he thinks that way and that sparring with him has helped him greatly. In his sparring with him, he was able to look back on the martial arts that he had learned. It is a process that he needs to go through to understand Shaolin's martial arts, which require deep understanding, so he tells him that there is no end to learning martial arts and that he wishes to go to a higher place in life. He asks Sungmin if he wishes for the same dream. Only after Sungmin heard that from Jae-hak did he realize the true reason why he had asked him the question. He wonders if it is because he is still tied down by his previous life. He still doubts the people who showed goodwill toward him. The truth is, there was no reason for him to doubt them, although there were many strange situations. He was afraid to face those situations head-on. He thinks back about his dream and what it is. His current dream is not to complete his martial arts, nor is it to be recognized by Hoyan. He doesn't want to run away anymore. Sungmin goes to Master Belyong and asks him if he knows anything about his blessing. When he first met Master Belyong, he asked him about his existence and how it was helping him, but he didn't want to say anything. He asks him first why he is asking that question after a year and a half of being in Shaolin. He says that he was scared of facing himself, but now he doesn't want to run away anymore. Master Belyong then tells him that among the numerous available effects, he has one of them. It is for others to feel compassion for him. He tells him that the blessing only interferes with how he looks. He asks him what he means by this. Master Belyong goes on to explain that the blessing only helps with his first impressions. If he is hard to get along with, people would still have left him even if he had the blessing. If he obtains something from those people, then it is entirely because of who he is or what he did. This would mean that all the relationships that Sungmin has built so far aren't fake. Sungmin gets a huge feeling of relief upon hearing this. Master Belyong offers to get rid of his blessing for him so he can have clean relationships without any guilt. Sungmin accepts this offer. Sungmin meets up with Hwon. Hwon takes notice of Sungmin's new clothes and asks him if he became a monk during his stay in Shaolin. Hwon offers him a drink since it has been a long time since they'd gotten together. He threw the drink towards Sungmin with internal energy, but Sungmin was able to catch it with ease. Both of them have gotten stronger during the time they've been apart. Hwon congratulates him for attaining the supreme peak. He also informs him that Lady Moyang has married Jaegil Taering. Hwon was told by Moyang that she doesn't like how arrogant and haughty he is. Because of this, Hwon trained like crazy in order to forget her and attain the supreme peak. He then asks Sungmin how things are with his life. He tells him that training in Shaolin has been enjoyable. Hwon tells him that he has changed a lot since the last time they saw each other. The anxious vibe he had is now gone. He then tells him that when he first met him, he had a strange feeling in his heart whenever he saw him, but he doesn't feel it anymore. He even says that he thought he had a thing for guys during that time. One more year passed, and Sungmin turned 22 years old. He left Shaolin. Before Sungmin left Shaolin, Master Belyong was tasked with passing a letter to the Mount Hua sect leader that is in Drimor. Things are working out well with him since the higher deity of time, Denir's temple, that Mershi introduced is in Drimor as well. He calls for Neville to buy some information about the Sword Phantom, Dokbijun, the Flash, Baek Sogo, and the little heavenly demon, Wiji Hoyan. Neville informs him that Baek is doing chivalrous deeds to aid the helpless and has become quite famous for doing so, and it has been a week since she has stayed in the big city, Rubes. Dokbi is spreading his name through challenges. He is on a sparring journey to look for reputable sects and martial artists to fight with and is currently headed for the Mount Hua sect that is in Drimor. Hoyan has gathered a few followers because of his immense charisma and strength. There are around 20, and they are all peak martial artists or above. Because of this, numerous forces are becoming wary of their group. Among their group would be the bloody heavenly demon, Baek Mujin. He is the ruler of the northernmost region. The group is heading north towards his territory, and they are likely to clash soon. Neville predicts that the bloody heavenly demon who rules over that area will likely win. Sungmin then tells him that his prediction is wrong and says that Hoyan will definitely win. Sungmin sees Hoyan after 8 years since they've last seen each other through a crystal ball. He notices that she has gotten prettier. He then notices what he just said and thinks of it as strange. He never ran into the bloody heavenly demon and Hoyan in his previous life. Hoyan had also disguised herself as a man in her past life, but now she is walking openly as a woman. He wonders if her values have changed compared to her previous life. Since she will clash with the blood heavenly demon, Sungmin heads to the north immediately to help her, but they won't meet until 2 years later since that's what he had promised her. He will make sure that she takes care of the bloody heavenly demon in an instant and waits for him at the peak. Meanwhile, Hoyan is inspecting her body and fondling her breasts. She is disappointed that she wasn't able to get big boobs like she wanted. A man approaches her and asks her if she is awake. He tells her that it would be better if she slept a little longer. She then tells him to stop calling her a lord since she didn't take any of them to be her subordinates. She tells all of them that she won't stop them from following her, but she also tells them not to expect anything from her in return. She dislikes the expectant look in the eyes of the people following her. She wonders if she should just kill all of these people following her. Someone else then approaches her and asks if she is the little heavenly demon. He asks her if she wants to fight him. This man is the blood heavenly demon, Baekmijin. She tells him that she is curious as to how skilled he is since she is also a heavenly demon. She then asks him which hand he uses to lift a spoon. He wonders why she is asking such a question, and she tells him that she will leave that hand intact for him. On Mount Hua Sect, Sungmin arrives and is stopped by guards. One of the guards asks him where he came from and his purpose for coming there. He informs them that he is there on an errand for Master Belyong. The guards let him in immediately and even apologize to him. After finishing his business there, he needs to go look for the higher deity of time Denir. He then gets greeted by a familiar face, Dokbi Jun. Sungmin is surprised that Dokbi still remembers him even after so long. He then asks him how he was able to recognize him since his eyesight was restricted in the mountains. He tells him that he remembers the internal energy that he exuded. He tells him not to mind him and just continue with his business in Mount Hua Sect. The guards behind him seem to have unpleasant looks on their faces. Dokbi's hands are shaking while he tries to hold on to his sword. As he sees Sungmin walk off, a mysterious spirit of a woman seems to be grabbing him. Sungmin meets with Sungha, the Mount Hua Sect's leader. Sungmin introduces himself and tells him that he is there to deliver a letter from Master Belyong. He hands him the letter, and Sungha tells him that the letter is because the current Mirim Alliance leader has resigned from his position, and he asked Master Belyong to become the next alliance leader. He opens the letter to see the response from him, and he sees that he refused the offer. He then changes the topic and asks Sungmin if he knows the Sword Phantom. Sungmin tells him that they met by chance and that he is waiting right outside the sect. Sungha informs him that the Sword Phantom wishes to duel with him. However, he has no intention of accepting it. Sungmin asks him why he refuses to do so. Sungha goes on to explain that he is also a martial artist and that he enjoys fighting with strength. It wouldn't be a problem for him to accept duels from someone who is qualified and strong enough, but the Sword Phantom is dangerous. Sungmin leaves and asks Dokbi if it is true that he uses evil sorcery. Hearing this, Dokbi laughs because the sage won't accept dueling with him because of evil sorcery. Sungmin then asks him what evil sorcery he learned. Dokbi asks Sungmin if he's reached a limit before, and he responds by saying yes. Dokbi stops the conversation, saying that he is too young to be discussing limits. He then asks Sungmin if he feels like he's growing old. He goes on to explain that even if one uses internal energy to slow down again, they can still feel strength in their fingers slowly seeping away. No matter how hard one tries, they cannot get back to their prime. He asks Sungmin if he knows that kind of despair. The mood shifts, and Dokbi becomes more frantic. He says that even if he has to dabble in evil sorcery and throw away my pride as a martial artist, he wants more despite all that. He tells Sungmin to be on his way because he doesn't wish to show him more of that side of him. Sungmin left as he felt it wasn't his place to say anything. He wanted to focus on other tasks and forget about it. He looked for the temple of Dini that Mershi had told him about. He stumbles upon an old wooden hut and is unsure if this is the temple that Mershi meant. He walks in and sees the higher deity of time, Denir. Denir sees the crest on his chest and suspects that Mershi sent him. Denir seems annoyed that Mershi sent someone so troublesome to him. He asks him if he is someone who crossed over time to see him. He seems to be displeased that Sungmin had tricked time by regressing and disrupting the flow of the world. He asks Sungmin if he lived his life exactly the same as his previous one, down to the smallest detail. Sungmin then says that that is impossible for him to do. Denir explains that every small change he makes will accumulate and cause further changes to the flow of the world. Sungmin then remembers how Hoyeon is now openly presenting herself as a woman and getting into conflict with the bloody heavenly demon. He asks Denir if that happened because of him. He tells him that it is exactly because of that, and that his existence itself has already distorted their world, and the change in flow will continue to grow. We see Dokbi stabbing Sungha. Sungin remembers what Denir told him about how his existence is distorting the world. He explains that he didn't choose to regress, and when he woke up, something had already been stuck to him. He asks Denir what that something could be. He tells him that he can't tell him. Even though he is a higher deity, he is neither omniscient nor omnipotent. He is simply an existence that cannot escape the restraints of death, because that is something they mustn't talk about. The moment they talk about it, they will have to be prepared to be annihilated. Just by vaguely mentioning it, the apostle appears. The sensation Sungmin is feeling is the same as the one he felt with Mershi and Kim. Denir apologizes and tells the apostle that he doesn't intend to say any more than what he had said. He tells him that none of the higher deities will be able to answer his question, nor are there any mortals that could do so. Sungmin then asks if there is any way for him to find the answer himself. Denir tells him to find Inveris, the one who escaped the restraints of death. He is someone with a distorted causality, but in a different way from Sungmin's. He tells him to get lost after telling him everything he could. Before he leaves, Sungmin asks him to give him a trial. From hearing this, Denir is guessing that he has already completed Mershi's trials. Denir refuses his request. He tells him that his trial isn't anything like Mershi's, whose trial's objective is training. He apologizes for not being able to give him his trial because everyone who has taken it was stronger than he was, but all of them lost their minds and died anyway. Sungmin then got kicked out. Denir told him to get lost and calm down before coming back. Sungmin decided to go to the village and rest for one night, as Denir said. The atmosphere in the village felt off for him. He then heard of the news that Dokbi had ambushed Taeoe Sungha at night and killed him. He tried recalling the faint memories of his past life, but it was like nothing had happened. The Sword Phantom and Sung had never dueled. The Sword Phantom then gave up and left the Mount Hua sect. 1 year later, he fought Hoyeon in a dungeon and died. Those were the events that transpired in his past life. He wonders if these events changed because of his regression. He continued to walk, and before he knew it, he had arrived at the Mount Hua sect. He gets stopped by a group of men. He asks why, and the men tell him that the inescapable net has been deployed from that point forward. They are in pursuit of the Sword Phantom. One of the men then informs their leader that Sungmin was with the Sword Phantom yesterday. Both the men and Sungmin get a hold of their swords, getting defensive. Sungmin lands the first hit and tells the men to get lost. He plans on meeting with Dokbi immediately. He then hears a familiar voice calling his name. He turns to see that it is Kim. The guard asks Kim if he knows who he is. Kim asks Sungmin if he is there to help the Phantom Sword. Sungmin responds, saying that he is unsure. Kim then decides that he will walk with him. Kim tells the guards that if Sungmin tries to help the Sword Phantom, he will take responsibility and kill him immediately. Sungmin thanks Kim for his help. Sungmin then asks Kim what happened to Dokbi and what Kim's business is being there. Kim then answers his question by showing him a corpse killed by evil sorcery. We really hope that you enjoyed this manhwa. Make sure to like and subscribe for more.